Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have Tim, a.k.a. Lizard King, in the studio today. Tim, you've covered a lot of ground. United States Marine Corps. We've got Gulf War vet, GWOT, veteran of the GWOT, Undercover Narcotics, Federal Air Marshal, and GRS, which stands for Global Response Staff with the CIA.
Yes. Yeah, it's been an interesting life.
Yeah,
I'm not done yet, I don't think, but I've had a good run.
Dude, well, thank you so much for coming in.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're gonna jump right into it because man, that's covering a lot of ground. We got a lot to unpack.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, let's unpack it.
Grew up in rural Indiana.
Rural Indiana, New Carlisle, Indiana, little town up north. Beautiful little town. It's really growing now, but
pretty standard sports. Everything worked.
Yeah. Played football, wrestled, ran track. Not a gifted athlete, but I enjoyed it.
Good work ethic, though, right?
Good work ethic.
That makes up
Absolutely.
for a lot. Yeah. You when did you? So you enlisted in the Marine Corps after a kind of standard, right? Like, why the Marine Corps?
Well, to tell the truth, they're posters and movies, and that's kind of the time frame. Platoon had came out, which wasn't the Marine Corps, but
dude, everybody watched it, right?
Everybody watched it. I was fascinated with the Vietnam War and listening to the veterans tell their stories. And Full Metal Jacket came out, and then I was hooked.
That was it. That was it. How old were you when you saw it?
It was right around that time frame that I was joining. And,
no shit.
Yeah. And so I'm like, it's going to be hard. I wanted to test myself, and so I'm going to do it. And so it was a quick decision, probably quicker than my parents wanted.
I was just going to ask, how were the folks?
Folks were, my father's an Army veteran, and I kind of did it on my own without even letting them know.
Mm-hmm.
I had turned 18 at that point, and I was going to go infantry, and told my father, hey, I'm signing up. I've already been in the recruiter's office. And he was kind of tore up. I think he realized that, I was going to be out of his life a little bit. And so after some discussion with him about my career path, he encouraged me to maybe rethink infantry and do something that I would be able to use later on in life as a career.
Because he had been in the Army infantry?
Yeah, he was a tank retriever.
Okay, right on.
And so he's a very mechanical guy. And so I took his advice and ended up joining the reserves. We had an combat engineer unit locally. And so I thought that'd be a good start. And if it was something really for me, I could always just go active.
Mm-hmm.
So
was there any, what was the thought process of the reserves versus full-time? Because you were working on something else, or just kind of keeping the door open?
Keeping the door open. I wanted to be a truck driver and start a business. And I thought that would give me some of the training and yet give me a taste of the military. And so I just thought that should be my path.
And at what point did that dissipate? Like in your Marine Corps career, at what point were you like, well, that was a plan that may not be coming to fruition?
About 1988, I had been in for a short time and went to the Mountain Warfare Training Center for a workup, the winter package out there.
Bridgeport, California, right?
Yeah, Bridgeport. And fantastic training, beautiful place. And met another Marine who was also a reservist that was a police officer. And he started telling me about it, being a police officer. And I thought, man, that sounds exciting. I might have to get in on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so did a ride along with him and did an internship there at their PD and decided, I think this is what I want to do. And so that kind of changed my whole path of what I wanted to do.
And it was just that one interaction with that particular individual? Like you'd never thought about law enforcement before?
Always thought about it. My grandfather had been a deputy sheriff for a short time. And the whole police, military life kind of appealed to me. And after doing a ride along and just the excitement of, everything going on, he worked in a big city and like, man, this could be cool to do every day. You know, when you're that age, you know, you're always
talking 19.
Excitement. Yeah, 19, 20 years old. And so I was hooked. I mean, it was a rush. And so I started pursuing that. And then before I could even get hired at a department, the first Gulf War kicked off and our unit was activated.
What was that like? So what? Yeah, the thought. Do you remember where you were sitting, or when you got the word?
Yeah, I was working on a dairy farm milking cows, and had just finished up milking when the call came from the unit saying, "Yeah, get down to the unit right away. We're going to activate." And so life has been a blur since then, actually.
You're right.
Yeah.
Was there a sense of urgency, like getting that call? And obviously it's pre cell phone and all that stuff. Like, was there a sense, like, when do you remember the last time that particular unit had been activated? Or
yeah, I don't know if they were ever activated before that. Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned cell phones. I say I got the call. Yeah, like my parents got the call at their house. They called the farmer I was working for. He came out to the barn, said, "Hey, call your mom and dad." And then so, yeah, that's how it worked back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so at that point, I was already in the process of being hired by a couple of different police departments, and right at the final stages. And so I contacted them right away because we were, it was a pretty fast process of shipping out and doing a workup to head over. And they're like, "Hey, no problem. We'll hold your spot for you. And when you get back, you just come back in. We'll slide you right in." And it never worked out that way.
It's funny how it usually doesn't.
Yeah.
Everybody says that, and then
And then when it's like, "Who are you again?" when you come back. So yeah, that's how that worked out. And I don't remember. It's been a few years now since that's happened, but it seems like we had a few weeks to get our affairs in order, and then it was on the plane out to Camp Pendleton and did a really quick workup, and then on the plane over to Saudi Arabia.
And what was your military occupational specialty when you first went in?
Motor T. Yep. I
Okay.
was a dragon wagon driver, LVS operator, not driver.
And for the audience sake, it's you had kind of described it as like that pivotal kind of snub nose tractor trailer.
8-wheel drive articulating Oshkosh. Incredible piece of machinery.
Main function is for moving heavy equipment, tanks, stuff like
tanks, artillery. They have a lot of different configurations of it, but that's mostly what we used it for.
And so what did the workup consist of?
A lot of, since we were an engineer unit, and we knew that Saddam had laid a lot of belts of landmines between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. It was focused a lot on mine detection, disarming mines, and not so much in the construction portion of the engineer.
It's kind of an important job.
Yeah. A lot of chemical warfare preparation, so a lot of long humps with mop gear on and gas masks, and it was miserable.
Yeah, is there anything worse? Especially, well, I guess the only thing that would be worse than training for it is actually going through it, right?
Yeah, I've spent a few days and nights in MOP 3, MOP 4.
Yeah, that's MOP 4, mask, all of it, all the way. I mean, you're just
everything.
Yep,
charcoal suit.
Not awesome.
And the equipment back then wasn't what it is today, and yeah, it was misery.
Well, take me through because when someone says mine detection, take me through what that consisted of in the Gulf War. I know what those words mean, right? You know what I mean? But
mine detection for that war was it was pretty cut and dry. We had metal detectors and we had probes. You had your K-bar to probe with, and there was even some guys doing that, believe it or not, during that war in our unit. But because of the way the wind works in the desert, when it came time to cross over the minefields, the wind had blown a lot of the dirt off from the mines, so they were visible.
Convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. And so we had Bangalore torpedoes, which would blow a path, and then we just used our heavy equipment to plow through them, get them out of the way so that infantry and artillery could come up behind us and get through the minefield belts. I think there was in the area we were at, there's about 3 belts of mines, each maybe a couple 100 meters
shit.
deep. Yeah.
So you pull up to, let's take it step by step. Because I'm generally interested because I never had to do it, right? I may have watched it happen or kind of through all my own personal experience. But you come up to where the supposed minefields are at, right? You have intel reports, what have you, and then who makes that decision? Are we gonna D9 or D7, dozer our way through it? Are we going to use the Bangalores to clear a path? Are we going to do the whole metal detector with the K-bar? Like who draws that short straw?
Yeah, exactly.
How does that work?
Well, I'll take it back a step. All of our equipment wasn't armored. I mean, it wasn't like the GWOT. There was no armor on anything back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so the lead up to the land invasion, we got sent over packages of armor plate. And so guys we were welding it on. We were, there was no...
Just Mad Maxing it.
Yeah, just Mad Maxing it to make it safer for the operator. And as far as who made the decision, I was a corporal at the time. I had just picked up corporal actually in the field while I was there. And then it was someone above me. And so, orders get handed down. They're like, hey, get to D7. We're going to plow a path, through the minefield.
Just eating them.
Just eating them up, plowing them out of the way. And the worst part is, you're getting out of your vehicle, you're approaching the minefields, and you're trying to, everywhere you walk, you're trying to walk in the tracks of your truck or tracks of other Marines that have already walked through there, because now you're getting a little nervous looking around.
Oh, sure.
Because, which ones didn't the wind uncover?
Yeah.
And so, so that was a process. And, out in the minefields, we would see a couple events. Hummer flipped upside down and actually hit one before we got up there. And so that's just a good reminder of
it.
It's real.
Yeah,
we got that one.
We found one.
Yeah.
How deep were they, right? Like on average?
A lot of them at that point of the war were on the surface, or shortly, 6-8 inches under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
We saw. But it was a pretty fast process. The whole train was moving fast. Every once in a while I look at my old pictures, and when we were approaching the minefields, it was like a convoy. As far as you could see left and to the right of you, nothing but Marines in trucks just moving up to the border.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty fast process.
It's amazing how you're recalling how nothing was armored, right? Like nothing was armored, and they had to ship the armor in. And you fast forward to the GWOT, the Iraqi invasion, right? You'd think we had learned none of our shit was armored either.
Not in the beginning.
Not in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
To hear somebody from the Gulf War be like, hey, we had to solve that problem too. It's like, holy shit. You think kind of in the same AO, we would have had this, area of operations. We would have had, we'd have thought we'd have covered this already.
You would think. We learn something every war.
Yeah, right.
And then we forget it, and then we relearn it.
And relearn it.
It's kind of a process.
What was one of the biggest takeaways from, because you're like, 18, 19 at the time?
Yeah, I think I was 19 or 20 maybe.
What do you think was one of the biggest kind of takeaways from that experience? Because it was quick, right?
Yeah, it was quick. When the ground war started, I don't know. They were already burning the oil wells before we got up to the border. And so it was dark. It could be noon, and it seemed like it was, evening or night, because the clouds were covered with all the smoke from the oil wells. 3 or 4 days, we were on the move. And then finally, I don't recall all the names. There was a battle going on up at Alger Airfield. I think that's about as north as we got, and kind of set up a perimeter there. But it seems to me within a couple of weeks, we were crossing back over the border, going the other way.
Went super fast.
Yeah, it was,
right?
It was fast.
Did you, obviously I wasn't there, but seeing the pictures, what did just everything is black, covered in oil.
Yeah.
When we were talking earlier, you said very little communications, or at least individual communications. You had made mention that, no maps, what is that like? Are you just you're figuring it out, right, as you go along?
You're figuring it out as you go. So on the build up to the ground war, we were maybe 800 meters from the border, and that's where our fire base was. And so we spent a couple months there, before the air war started.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, we're bringing stuff up for the artillery units, and no comms. You know, no one had radios. I think the captain had a radio in his Humvee, and that was it. The CO, but no navigation, no GPS. That wasn't even a thing then, I don't think. You might have one guy in your fire team with a compass.
Holy shit.
No maps, no paper maps. And so, you know, it was all word of mouth, and people would draw maps on a napkin, and they might send you. We got tasked with heading down to the port of Jabil to pick up some Dragon rockets, if you remember those.
Mm-hmm.
Some artillery shells to bring up to the front.
Tank snipers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're trying to drag information, like who do we contact, our point of contact, you know, what's the route to get there, and it's just like figure it out. And so
it's like figure
no time limit,
yeah.
You know, and I'm a corporal, so I think on that run, I was in charge of the guys. We took 2 or 3 trucks down, and we were, you know, wandered around the desert for an entire day, overnight, wherever we found ourselves, get fuel where we could get it, and finally made it down there. And within 10 minutes of being in the city, I get pulled over by an MP because I swung it right to make a left turn to get my trailer around it, and they thought I was in the opposite lane. So he pulls me over, and he's going to write me a ticket. Yeah,
you are joking.
Yeah, and we're trying to get ready for the invasion, and so yeah, we pick it up and we head back up, and it was a 2 or 3 day trip. And again, it just blows me away that that's just how things were ran then.
Did you know at the time, were you like at any point when you were doing that, were you like, hey, this is bananas? You know what I mean? Like we're, you know, I mean, looking back on it now, it's easy to be like, holy shit, we did what? But at the time, was the levity of the situation like?
Well, when you're living it, yeah, it just seems like this is just the way it is.
This is just normal.
Yeah. I mean, cell phones weren't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
GPSs weren't a thing. Evidently, paper maps weren't a thing for the Marine Corps back then. But yeah, we made it happen. I mean, that's an important thing. That's we made it happen, and yeah. And so the air war started in January. It was an interesting night. They had everybody on the machine gun post that night, and we watched all the fireworks, and then a short time later, we're getting ready to do the ground war.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's so fast, right? The ability, you know, the time, space, and logistics, the ability to move that amount of people, that much equipment,
Incredible.
You know, it's really a sight, you know, like when you see it for the first time, right? I can remember the invasion of Iraq, you know, just like you said, just kind of looking to the left and right and being like, wow, you know, this is a massive endeavor.
Everybody's a piece of the puzzle.
Everyone, right.
And it's a big puzzle. And yeah, it was moving fast. So it was a great experience. When you're that age, you have a different concept of time, but you're around great dudes. You know, I'm friends with most of those guys to this day, 35 years later. We still stay in touch, and we see each other from time to time. So you build those relationships, and you'll see that theme throughout our conversation is everything is satisfying and joyful because of the guys you're with.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a great experience for me at that age. I mean, it was the biggest event of my life up to that point.
Had you been anywhere outside of the country until then?
No, I had not been outside of the country.
Right.
You know, when I flew to boot camp, that was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane.
Yeah.
And you know, it's different. It was just a different time.
Something I ask a lot of the guests that are, you know, veterans of a conflict, like that first initial, you know, step off the plane or off the boat, you know, when you're in that foreign environment, which, you know, your senses are heightened, right? Like the sights, the smells, the heat, you know, because it seems like we, you know, rarely go fight anymore these days, fight anywhere where it's cold, right? And so to kind of take me through that, do you remember that as a young man? You know, that first initial, holy shit, I might as well be on a different planet.
So part of the workup before, I spent a little time at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, during part of the workup, and it was around dry heat. But when I stepped off that plane in Saudi Arabia and it hit you, you know, this blast wave, and, you know, then that theme is replayed out through my career in the Middle East a lot. But yeah, it's different. It's a wake up call. The real wake up call is when we were crossing over into Kuwait. So much scuttlebutt going on. You don't know what to expect. And so
right.
You're thinking as soon as we cross over the border, yeah, it's on. We're going to be under fire, and we're a big machine, and we were moving so fast. We were pretty much just overwhelming everything in front of us, and so it didn't quite play out like I had imagined it in my mind.
Sure.
But crossing over the border itself, the border was a big berm, spanned most of the boundary of the country of Kuwait, and engineers, we had made some paths through the berm to get the equipment through. And something that stands out is crossing over that berm, they had dug a big ditch, and I was driving the LVS at the time, and I hit that and came up, smacked my head against, we were in full battle rattle, so I held my, smacked my head against the ceiling of the truck, screwed my neck all up. And so for the first several days of the ground war, I could hardly move my neck. It was injured. I remember very little because you're on the go, night and day for those first few days. So I don't remember all the little details, but yeah, it was a good time.
It does. It gets fuzzy real quick, right?
Yeah.
And because it's sensory overload, and especially for like that first couple of days or weeks or whatever, until you kind of establish your new normal, but I always find it very intriguing to hear people, kind of verbally articulate, the sights, the sounds, the smells, and things
the smells.
like that.
You never forget the smells.
Yeah, right.
And we had our first sergeant was a Vietnam vet, as was our gunny, company gunny, and so they shared a lot of their experiences with combat and war. And that helped quite a bit. They were very influential within the company.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And just, that war seems so long ago for guys of my age. But now that I look back at it and some years have passed, I mean, it was very few years separated that war from the first Gulf War, really. And yeah, so once we got back down south, I think we just immediately, once the war was deemed over, everything Marine Corps kicked in. We're out in the middle of nowhere, very little equipment, and now having formations, they want boots shined.
All of it.
All the stuff that you don't have, boot polish, you don't have it. We sent all that stuff back home a long time ago. Yeah. But
combat's over, let the games resume, right?
Go get a haircut, have a shave. So yeah, it seems to be the theme throughout the Marine Corps and during war.
Oh, yeah, and it's never going to change, and I'm glad it shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you kind of smiled when you said that, when what was it like because it happened so fast, right? Do you remember what it was like getting the word, so to speak, that, hey, it's over with, like victory, we're good, we're done, mission accomplished? Like, because you kind of smiled when you said that, right? So that it's almost like there's a little story behind that.
Well, it's just like, that's it. I came here and, we sweltered out in the desert for months leading up to this. And so I expected a little more than that. I seemed like I got cheated out.
I was going to say, did you feel like you got cheated a little bit?
Out of some experience. Because when you're young, you think you need that experience. And as you get older and a little wiser, you realize, you don't really need that in your life. I mean, you're ready for it, you train for it, but don't go looking for it. It'll find you.
Yeah, try and talk an 18, 19-year-old kid out of chasing the dragon, right?
Not going to happen.
It's impossible.
Not going to happen.
Until you catch it.
Yeah, so a lot of wisdom comes with age. So we headed back down south, and then it just turned into garrison stuff. And luckily, now it was, the challenge became finding a flight home or finding a window for a flight home. And I was only down south for a few days, and we had some ships in port down there, and I think our gunny came into the tent and said, hey, we need 12 volunteers to hop on a ship and take it back to San Diego. And we already saw the writing on the wall. Things were going to get, kind of stupid around there. And so
yeah, it does.
I had 11 buddies, and we're all right there in the tent. And we're like, hey, we'll do it.
Let's get out of here.
Like, what day are we leaving? And like, you're leaving like the ship is idling. It's ready to go. Grab your stuff right now. So it was shove everything in the sea bag, throw it on the 5-ton, and 5-ton had some issues just on the short drive to the port, so we didn't know if we were going to make it. And we went up the gangway, and last guy up, they pulled the gangway, and before we even got settled to the chow hall where they briefed us,
they were shoving off.
We were shoving off, and
yeah.
we were on our way. So we spent about 30 days at sea, went through a hurricane. First time on a big ship.
I was going to say, like, that's an experience unto itself,
it was
right?
a merchant marine ship.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
And so we made a stop. If you remember back to 1990, we were going to stop in the Philippines, then they had that volcano that went off. And so we ended up going to Singapore, and they cut us loose for about 32 hours at Singapore, which I knew nothing about. I couldn't find it on a map, at that point in my life. Like, sounds good to us. They had beer there, and
yeah, 32 hours is plenty of time to get in trouble.
To get in a lot of trouble. And my knowledge of life in the world was limited at the time, and so again, knowing nothing about Singapore, we immediately went out, find the first bar, and just started pounding beer, and that led to shenanigans and led to us climbing the fence of the presidential palace, or one of the government palaces.
Oh, boy.
And urinating in the fountain in the front lawn of it, and climbing back over, and not till years later when you start hearing about the caning and the people getting hemmed up down there, that you look back and you thought, well, I got lucky.
You would have been executed, yeah.
I'd still be there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we made it back, barely. We were on the pier. I remember one of our Marines passed out on one of the park benches on the pier waiting for the shuttle to get us back to the ship. And someone came by and stole the shoes off his feet and stole his watch. And so he woke up with no shoes on and no watch. And
port stories are the best, dude. Port stories are the best.
It was horrible.
I would like to say that you're just kind of set up for failure. You know what I mean? Like, you're 18, 19, 20 years old. You've been cooped up on the boat, and say nothing about having just come out of an active war zone. Like, and here, just
a little bit of money in your pocket.
Yeah, you got walking around money, and just here's this foreign country. You don't speak the language, and there's booze. That's a recipe. It's a recipe for.
It was.
Yeah. Holy smokes.
But we made it back, and ended up back in San Diego. We beat the rest of our company back to Pendleton, and we go to check in, and they didn't want us checking in until we had the rest of our company. So they're just like, go find something to do.
No shit.
Yeah. So,
which is another recipe for, a disaster.
Yes. For like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They said, just go find something to do, keep yourselves busy, stay out of trouble. So some of us flew home real quick to, see our folks. Made phone calls, of course, and then just caroused for 3 weeks until the rest of the company got there. Sure. And then soon after that, it was pretty quick transition out of Camp Pendleton back home, and made it back home.
And that's got, if you will, that's got to be a little bit of a, I don't want to say a rough transition, but kind of a jarring transition. If you want to unpack that a little bit.
I think the freedom that comes with a experience like that, I felt really free over there. Like, it wasn't like the GWOT where you have constant people around you. We were out in the middle of nowhere. And very little supervision. We had really good officers. We had really good staff NCOs. And like the story I told about, taking off to go get, bring up supplies up to the artillery. They didn't put a time limit on you. I mean, they're you're on your own.
Just go figure it out.
Be responsible. Yep. And so that freedom, I got a really good taste of that. And so it was a hard transition when I got home. I wanted to live that lifestyle still, and it wasn't very conducive to civilian life.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and I don't know if this rule was in place back then, but you think like, you're 18, 19, 20 years old, right? And you're in charge of the equipment, the weapons, the munitions, an immense amount of responsibility, right? And then like now, if it's 2025, you can't even rent a car.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So you're in charge of God knows what, you know what I'm saying, in whatever branch of service that you're in, you know, a pivotal part, because everyone is a cog in the wheel, right? And then you get to the civilian, you know, you leave, you get to the civilian world, and you can't even get a car. It hurts.
Yep.
You know, like that's got to sting a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. And probably the one thing that kept me grounded was, you know, still trying to get on the police department. I want to be a police officer still. And so that kept me grounded. Kept me on the straight and narrow for the most part. And so within a week of getting back, went to the departments I'd applied for and reminded them, hey, I'm back, ready to start this new job. And they're like, back of the line.
Was it back of the line?
Back of the line.
Yep.
So went through the whole process again and stuck with it. And while that was happening, ended up getting hired as an officer in my hometown. And so that got me to the academy in early 92 and 1992. And then from there, I just started looking at bigger departments that had more opportunities for specialized units, and just started making that my priority.
Yeah, and because how long did you spend at the local PD before you transferred?
A little over a year, I think.
So that was quick. It didn't take you.
It was quick, yeah. Once you get the academy under your belt, you're a little more marketable. And so right away I ended up going to a neighboring big city and started working there as a patrol officer.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you a patrol officer in the larger city before you? Because you have Undercover Narcotics.
Yeah, I went to narcotic unit. I probably did 4 years. They say you're a rookie for the first 5 years. That's very true. You're still learning how to read people. You're still learning how to handle every situation that's thrown at you. And as you mature in that, then you're kind of ready to move on to the next step. And so, yeah, I went to the narcotics unit as an undercover officer.
And what was that process like? Like, did they approach you, or did you have to seek them out? Or
it's a vetting process. When they have an opening come open, they'll post it, and you apply, go through an interview process, and they'll look at your record and talk to your sergeant and people you work with, and find out what kind of man you are, and make a decision. And I made it and was hired and brought on to that unit. What
do you think is from an now having been through it, did you ever find yourself in the course of your career on like that interview panel? Because the question I'm gonna ask is, like, looking back at the verbal interview process, are they harping on integrity? Obviously, I would think integrity would be a huge, because you're going to be in some shady, right, tempting situations. Calmness under pressure. Like, what were the questions like in that interview process?
Probably like verbal interaction. And, the police department is pretty easy to find out what kind of officer you are just by looking at your productivity. Even back then, that stuff is pretty well documented. They can look at your arrest reports to see how articulate you are on writing reports. That's you do a lot of report writing, so they want to make sure that you're able to communicate in writing, because there's a lot of documentation that takes place with narcotic investigations. So that's one of the things they look at. And then also, like everything, like with GRS, can you get along well with others? Are you easy to work with? That's probably more important than anything. Can you get along with others? And yeah, I'm a jokester, and I tend to only take things serious when they need to be taken seriously. But other than that, we have to keep ourselves sane.
Yeah, there's there's no reason this can't be fun.
No,
just because it's dangerous.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, what was the training like? Something I've always been intrigued in. Like, was it a course? Was it a school? Was it all OJT? Like, what was that process like to prep yourself for the first time you're kind of out there on your own?
A lot of it was just, there's always a pecking order. There's always people with more time than you, just like any job. And so you're watching what they're doing, trying to emulate what they're doing.
You're bird dogging for a while.
You're reading all the intel that's coming in to find out who the players are in your area, the process of building an asset up and using them effectively. When I say asset, informant,
source,
someone that's going to get you in to introduce you to someone that can, sell you some narcotics.
And what's the motivation for a source or an asset to
It could
cooperate?
vary. So probably the ones that are most common are the ones that are trying to work off charges. You know, they've been popped and they want to help themselves out by, providing information or making introductions to lower their sentence. But some of the best assets we've had are the ones that are doing it for, some are monetary, but I had one that was just incredible, and he was just legitimately concerned about the way his neighborhood was turning out and wanted to make a difference. And he grew up there. He knew everybody. He was very well respected on the street, very tough guy. And he turned out to be one of the best ones I ever had. In fact, he was so respected, and we communicated long after I left the PD. He was so respected on the street as being just the guy that he would bring me into places that, because of the color of my skin, you just don't go to places like this. And he would bring me in and introduce me to people, and people would look at me a little odd, and he would just like sell him some drugs. And they were like, okay. And, I mean, he was that kind of guy.
Really?
Yeah. That's a short version of it, but yes. And really, really made an impact on that part of the city because of guys like that. That's
incredible. And just to hear it's dramatized, right? Like you see it in some of the shows and in the movies and stuff like that. But to hear someone who's done it, for realsies, I think it's fascinating.
It's scary at times.
And that's what I'm kind of I want to talk about. Like, I'm trying to put myself in, hey, I want to do this. Okay, I've been trained. I'm bird dogging and watching, my teammates or my senior mentors. And then what's that first, the training wheels are off, you're going out to score dope, or work or crap, whatever it is, right? Like, what is that like? What is that first time like?
I found out quickly that you have to talk the talk and walk the walk. So, regardless if you're scared or unsure or you think that they're onto you, you're playing a role and in this movie that you're in, and depending on how convincing you are, that's how successful you're going to be.
And so, like, what was some of the character that you played? Because that's exactly what it is, right? Like, I have to develop this, shitbag persona, in the criminal networks or whatever, walk the walk, talk. Did you grow your hair out? Did you, what would you do?
Yeah, I grew your hair out. I had long hair, beard. I rode motorcycles most of my life.
So you're playing like the biker?
Playing biker, factory worker. We live in an industrious city with a lot of factories, and so it was pretty easy to look like that. And I have a pretty good background in mechanics and carpentry, things like that. So I could answer questions, about anything they would try to vet me and, try to dig into my background. I had an answer for. And then just, being bold and just saying, hey, this is about business for me. I'm trying to make money doing this. So, I'm not sticking around here. I'm not going to sit around and get high with you because, I'm about making some money with this dope. So let's get on with it. And you convince them, and it's on. And I talked to you earlier about, the first week I was there trying to get my feet wet and watching the other officers work and how they were talking to people. And we had just taken down like a mid-level player, and he was pretty well connected. And we wrapped him up, and he was being processed down at the jail. And we were processing all the evidence in his cell phone, flip phone. This is the 90s, right? Flip phones were even something to have back then. And it started buzzing. Someone was trying to get a hold of him. And so it was on text message. And, text messaging back then was a little bit
You were going to type all the numbers? Like you had to Morse code it?
It was a little more time consuming than
ABC, yeah.
Pagers were still the thing back then. So I started having a conversation with this guy. And he's like, hey, are you still on? I'm like, hell yeah, I'm still on.
And the owner of the phone is being processed. He's gone.
He has no idea.
Right,
and
okay.
It's so, it moved pretty fast. So the word's not out yet that he's been arrested. So no one knows. And so I started having a conversation with this guy. And I said, hey, I could use a couple ounces of crack. And he's like, oh, that's a lot. And I'm like, I'll pay you extra. You know, when they hear about extra money, their eyes light up.
That's the hook.
Yeah,
that's the hook right there.
And so he's like, okay. He says, I'm in. And so we're having this conversation, and I said, you know, meet me over here. And he's coming from a neighboring city. He didn't have all the dope on him, so he had to go get some re-up. And so finally I'm like, well, I need to find out what this guy's driving. And so I'm like, hey, what are you going to be in? He's like, you know what I'm going to be in. And
yeah, which like when you were telling me that story, I'm like, dude, that is such a potentially pivotal moment. Like, and I guess like, what you know, you're hoping that he takes the bait, and you're going to explain how you kind of talked yourself out of it. But what had he not? You know what I mean? Like, what's just, okay, fuck it. We didn't get him.
So I you know, you take the risk of scaring him off because he's like, you know what I'm driving. And so again, it comes to the presentation. I'm like, hey, listen, I deal with a lot of people. I've had a long day. I'm hustling this stuff too. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna be in the black Oldsmobile. I'm like, okay, right on. Okay, I remember that car. And you just play it off. And so right away, you know, we set up some uniform cars in the area where I was gonna meet him. And he shows up, and he drives by me, looks at me right away. He doesn't recognize me, so he just slow rolls past me, and I can tell the look in his eye. He's a little nervous now.
It's all it takes is one red flag disturbance.
One red flag. Yep. They're not dumb. And so before you could even get out of the lot, the uniforms are on them, getting them pulled over. And so we do the search, and no dope. And like, I could tell by the way I talked to this guy via text and such that he's got it on him. It just hid well. And so we do another search, nothing. So I walk up to him. I'm like, spread your legs, and start patting him down, hit the groin area, and there it is.
There it was. Yep.
2 ounces of cocaine.
Holy smokes.
And so after that, I'm like, hey, I could get into this. I could be good at this. And so you just take those experiences and you build on them, and you become bolder and bolder, and unafraid to confront people and talk to people, and you'd be amazed at what happens.
Is there a point where that becomes, I don't want to say counterproductive, because I could see where you would easily kind of get addicted to it, you know, if I want to use that word, like, oh, okay, this was effective, you know, and so now you're pushing and trying harder and, you know, kind of pouring the gas on it. Was there ever a point, or is there a point where it's like, hey man, like you're getting a little, I don't want to say too far out there and make it sound dramatic, but is there such a thing as too bold or pressing it too hard?
Yeah, you can get reckless really easily. And I found myself there. And then you just back it off. Just like in the military, tactics are always changing. And when what I'm doing is no longer effective, change it up, you know. And people are different. And you just have to, again, that's where working patrol for so long really, really came into play. To me, that's the most valuable experience I probably had in my life, for reading people. And
just the constant interaction
with people. If you think you're scaring them off, take it down a notch. And because, you know, at that point in my life, my success was based on getting this person, you know, getting into the inner workings of them and their network. And so whatever it took to do that, I was willing to do.
Well, and what was and I'm going to try and articulate this well, right? Because I've never lived that law enforcement undercover life. Like, are we talking, like, at what point are you able to come out of character? You know, like, are you in character for weeks at a time? Like, do you always have to be in character? Is it only when you, like, how often would you go home? How often would you leave that, you know, I'll say area of operation and kind of come back to being Tim for a second? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So you live it, you have to live it, because you're out there doing this in the city you live in, and you never know when you're going to run into these people, or, you know, at the grocery store. So you're living that cover, dressing the same, acting the same, driving the same vehicle. You're hanging around different people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, during that time frame, I think I was maybe like a total of 4 or 5 years I was doing this.
I was going to say, I think I have my notes here. You said like 5 years.
And so you tend to not, you know, all your cop buddies that you hung out with in patrol, you know, you go to the private parties and stuff still, but you don't go to any of the events. You don't hang out at the police department. You know, obviously you don't do that. And So yeah, you have to live it, and you're treated differently. You quickly see how society treats you when you look different.
Oh yeah,
and you act differently. You know, I remember during that time frame, I went to buy a truck, and you're out there, you know, no salespeople looking the way I look. They're
like,
not coming out to help you.
Yeah, this
guy's gonna waste my time. You know, and then you go in, you start talking to them, and eventually they find out who you work for, and like, oh man, I'm sorry, I looked out, and they come right out and tell you, yeah, you just look like someone I wasn't gonna waste my time with.
Sure.
And like, Roger that. I must be doing it right then.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's effective then,
yeah,
right?
I'm doing it right.
Did you have civilian friends that you kind of had to read into? Hey, don't approach me, don't whatever. Or were you kind of? I know it's very very typical once you're in the law enforcement kind of community. That seems to be like the majority of who you hang around with. But did you have?
That was my family for a long time, and some of them still are. So. Yeah, like I said, I didn't go to any public events or anything like that. I would go to the private party still because we're young. It was very much like being in the military. Stressful day all day, and then you unwind with some really epic parties at night. Most of us were all in the same shift, and so as far as civilian friends, I had a few, but they were not in the city because I'm from the rural area, and so. It was pretty easy to maintain relationships with them. But being out in town, like that, my girlfriend, I just told her, hey, if someone walks up and they start talking to me and you don't recognize them, just walk away. I didn't want her tied to being connected with me and what I was doing. And that happened a few times. It's pretty easy if you just think ahead and plan for it. And then the local narcotics units from other counties and even across the border into Michigan, we had a really good relationship with them. And so if something was really close to us, maybe where we were living, my home, we could call in other units to come handle it, and they would do the same for us. I worked a lot up in Michigan, in that area. Meth was just getting going or becoming more popular towards the end of my stint there. Most of it was cocaine, crack cocaine, and powder, a little bit of heroin, but not like it is today.
Did you feel like you were making a dent at all?
Oh, you always think you are, but
probably not.
Probably not. A lot of it's like in the military or even with GRS, being in war, you ask yourself, are you making a difference? And most days, it doesn't matter. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a great time. I'm around great dudes. I'm getting paid for doing this. That's the goal, is to make a difference. You make a difference in some people's lives, especially probably the hard part of that job is going into those houses because you really build a relationship with these people, and you'll be in their house with their kids, and you see how they live and how they treat their spouses and how they treat their kids, and it's heartbreaking. Drugs have completely just taken over their life, and so that was probably the hardest part of dealing with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that would be difficult, right? Because you got to be sitting there and you're playing that part, right? And it's might be hard. Like, was it in your character or in your character's character to develop those relationships with the kids, or did you have to like build that into your persona where you kind of treated the kids the same way that the parents did, right? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I didn't have to have any interaction with them. And, I knew the outcome of this. I knew what the end game was going to be. Dad's going away to jail, or mom, whatever the case was at the time. And so they're going to be separated, and maybe things will get better for them. So that was the only maybe satisfaction I had with the whole thing, that maybe your life will get better once, we get this problem, or maybe worse. You're rolling the dice. Right?
Yeah, right. And so over that course of 5 years, it's got to be an addiction, right? There's got to be a little bit of addiction to
Absolutely.
it. Was that, at what point did you realize that, oh man, like maybe I should kind of level off on this, or maybe I should switch? Was that a choice? Did you decide to leave it after 5 years, or was there like a limit, a department limit, or?
Well, you start getting more reckless. more brave to the point of being dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And back to, was I making a difference? You start, there's days where like, you run into the same people that you've already dealt with once. You've already got cases on you. They've already prosecuted, and they're back out on the street. And you're just like, why? Why am I wasting my effort? And so, you have a few close calls. Got robbed once, and you get they call it gigged. They
busted basically.
Yeah, you're dealing with them, and they just grab your money and take off running. Now you're get home and you're fighting and try to get your buy money back. It's just like, what am I doing? It's not my money.
Yeah, right.
But you treat it like it is.
Well, because that's got to be part of the character, right?
Yeah, you have
right.
Because anybody that's gonna spend their hard-earned money and someone tries to steal it, you're gonna fight for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's days like that. And I remember one Christmas, it was Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, and I'm sitting in some project housing, watching these guys cut up cocaine, and they're giving me a hard time. And I've already dealt with them a few times, and the Christmas tree is there. There's no presents under the tree. It's just depressing. The kids are dirty and running. And like, it's Christmas. What the hell am I doing sitting in this? So I transitioned out of that into another unit that did a lot of street level by bus. And we had a huge problem with the prostitutes that were hooked on crack. Constantly getting complaints from neighbors like, hey, we need our neighborhood cleaned up. We got these girls standing out in the street day and night. They're frequenting all the crack houses. And so I had a really good team. There's 4 of us, and we had this unit, and we would go out and really focus instead of on long-term investigations, just cleaning up neighborhoods.
Just crashing parties.
Parties. And we did that very effectively for couple of years. And so, we would go out and do 2 or 3 a night.
Just cause havoc.
Buy the drugs, arrest them on the spot, get them off the street. And it was very effective. Too effective, actually.
Well, why
put
do you
ourselves
say
out of work.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, it draws a lot of media attention when things like that happen. So, yeah, and that's about the time frame that video surveillance was starting, equipment was starting to improve. They started sending us to more surveillance schools. It was always easier for prosecution if you had video and audio of the actual deal going down versus just testimony. And so I kind of got more interested into that portion of it. And before you know it, all of our cars were wired for audio and video. And it got to the point where prosecution was way up, and they wouldn't even, it was like, take the plea or plead guilty, because if you go to trial, you're going to lose. Here's a video of you.
Because it's all right here.
It's all right here.
Yeah.
Don't say you didn't do it, because it's right here. And so that was satisfying. And then, I transitioned out of there to the detective bureau. I was a detective for a short amount of time. And that would have been in that 2001 timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking earlier. You mentioned the kind of immersion of the technical surveillance and the low pro cameras and stuff like that. Like, you you get caught with something like that, right? Like, because it wasn't like they were super James Bond, like we were talking about. Like, it was some pretty bulky stuff. Like, and you came up with some kind of ingenious ways to hide it in plain sight.
Yeah. So, I mean, technology, as you know, has changed so much. What we have today, or what you work with, didn't exist in the 90s, and we had to make do with what we had. And so there's a few companies that were making micro cameras, and I got linked up with them, and we started experimenting with them and having really good luck. But they were, when I say micro, micro the size of a coffee cup.
I was going to say, the size of,
and the range that they would put out signal was limited, and so we always had to have a repeater. and the repeater was big and bulky, so we had to conceal that in a vehicle or a building, whatever we were doing at the time. And so we just had to come up with different ways to conceal it. But year by year, the cameras got smaller and smaller. But in the beginning, they were about the size of like a modern day GoPro. That was considered micro at the time. And we experimented with a bunch of different ways to mount them in a car, and were moderately successful. And finally I had the idea one day, I'm like, hey, let's just mount this thing on the dashboard, right in front, just overt as can be. And I grabbed an old remote from a stereo, and I put it in the console of the car, and we would pick up and do these deals in the car, and they would look at that camera, and they're like, what is that? I'm like, first we tried the Kleenex box and cutting the hole, and
sure,
come on, that drew more attention than just a plain camera. And it didn't really even look like a camera, just a big black box, and it had a pinhole camera in it. And I would sell it as, it's a remote sensor for my car stereo. I just bought it. It's new on the market. The thing doesn't work. It's a piece of crap. And they're, okay. And they would just buy it. Meanwhile, just perfect video, perfect audio. And so we did that for a while. And, eventually, as time goes on, our tactics and techniques have to change. And things got dangerous. When you're a single cop in a car and you're doing these by bus, you may think you're dealing with one person, and then they get in the car, and before you know it, one or two pile in the back. And so now you have a 3-on-1, and you're doing it by bus. So that as soon as the deal goes down, you're trying to get backup to secure these guys, and things went sideways more than once. And so we came up with the solution of having a couple guys in the car, in the trunk, concealed away. And so they were always with the cop that was up front, the UC that was actually doing the deal. And then on his signal, they would either pop the trunk and come around, or finally we'd rig the back seat so the back seat could just fold forward, and you got one dude, maybe two, right there.
Yeah, surprise, shitbags.
Surprise. And it was a surprise for a lot of them. More than once, they shrieked like little girls because,
totally not expecting it.
Unexpected. And of course, when you had female suspects, they thought the worst, like, hey, this drug deal is going to turn into something much worse. And so we'd have to calm them down, like, hey, we're not here to hurt you. And, we identify ourselves. But that was successful for, again, a summer, before word gets out, and word travels on the street pretty quickly.
I was going to say, because they go, they get processed, and then they start basically, because the jig is up at that point, and they've got to be able to, correct me if I'm wrong, like they're going to have an idea of how or why they got caught. Yeah. Right, because the jig is up at that point. So they start running their mouth. It takes one phone call, and like you said, it didn't take very long to.
They're at the county jail. They're telling other inmates, and they're letting everybody know.
Be on the lookout for this. This is what they're doing.
Check the back seat, pull in the back seat.
Yeah, you had said that, right? You noticed that personally, right?
Yeah. And so then okay, it's time to change tactics, and then we just figure something else out. So it's just a constantly changing, I can't imagine what it's like today with the technology that we have. Repeaters were limited, sketchy at best, and you lose communication. Now things have gotten really dangerous because you don't know if someone's in trouble or not. But so technology has certainly helped in that aspect.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting question. Like, what was did you have like a react team or a quick reaction force?
When we go out to do a deal, you try to have 3 or 4 of the guys from the unit supporting you. And by supporting, they were in the area. On a good day, we would have a van with a couple knuckle draggers in it that were ready to do jump outs and help you out. But again, trying to run surveillance, if you're moving around a lot and you're going to different houses, you don't want to get burned by having this vehicle, shadowing you around.
Right.
So they knew that, and so they would try to stay a good distance away. And it's just life, man. Things happen. They lose track of you. They can't find you, and you get outside the range of the repeater. and now things now things go sideways. Now you're on your own. So it comes back to that, being able to handle yourself, whether verbally or physically, verbally, hopefully, to get yourself out of the situation. So
it's got to be such an immense amount of, stress. Even when you're comfortable and you're good at it, right? Like, you said you got very comfortable very quick. You're confident, even to the point of, getting a little, being a little reckless was the word you used, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's because even though you're comfortable, you're proficient, and you're kind of chasing that dragon, like, there's still an immense amount of, data going, being used up, bandwidth being used up in the background of what, this is the character I'm trying to play. Oh, by the way, if this breaks bad at any second, the what ifs are going, right? The what ifs are going. And like, how long did it take you to decompress from that? Does that make sense? Because, you don't have to be, every day doesn't, like, every day's not a gunfight. Every day's not a scuffle. Every day's not a life and death, right? But potentially it is. At any moment you could get, the jig is up, right? And so how did you deal with that decompression once whether it was on a daily basis or a weekly basis or what have you, right?
I think it's just hanging out with the guys, we're all experiencing the same thing. I might do 2 deals today, and then I'm going to support you on 2 later this evening. And so we're experiencing the same thing, so we get each other. And so we talk it out. And, you have to understand, anytime you have drugs and you have money, and usually weapons involved as well, meeting at the same place at the same time, it can go either way.
Right.
This person wants money, but they don't have drugs, they're going to try and take your money. And if you have drugs and they have no money, they're going to try and take your drugs. And so every deal has the potential for that. But, our policy was we try to get 2, 3, 4 really good documented buys at the time. This is years ago. It's all changed now, I'm sure. Just to secure a good prosecution. So, hey, if you got 4 charges, we know you're going to maybe plead to 1. Mm-hmm. And so we would, so once they meet you, that first time is the hardest, Mm-hmm. I'm unknown to them, they're unknown. But once you start getting comfortable, it gets a little bit easier.
Were you tested at any point? You had to have been, right? Yep.
And so, the guys that have been caught before, they don't want to go back to prison. And so they want to stay in the game, but they just don't want to go back to prison. And so they're a little more careful, and they're dangerous. And they want to search you, strip search you. They'll, whatever length they need to go to ensure that you're legit, And so most cops will tell you other men are very, very skeptical about touching another man's junk. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I keep my gun. And, they would do a pat down on me, pretty thorough pat down, and always miss it. And then everybody kind of knows this, and yet they still, it's just one of those things they can't get over. Yeah, I'm not going to touch your junk. But every once in a while, you would get some. And if they come across your gun, it wasn't the standard issue. We always carry something different than a standard issue.
Yeah, I mean, other than the placement, what is I wouldn't see that the jig would be up because you're armed, right?
Yeah, they'd be searching. They find, if they felt my gun, they'd be like, "What's this?" I'm like, "It's a gun, duh." It's a dangerous game we're playing.
Yeah,
here.
We're doing crime.
Of course, I'm buying crack and I'm selling it. As soon as I can buy it from you, I'm taking it, sell it to another guy. You don't think I'm going to defend myself? And so, again, all in the presentation. If you acted nervous, we had a guy on, and I have the video of it still to this day. It's so funny. We had a guy that was fairly new, and he had short hair. He hadn't grown his hair out yet, and he was in the process of it. He wanted to get in the game, and so we take him out, and we're trying to ease him into this, and we got a wig for him. Because you can't go out with short hair back then, especially in the 90s. Short hair was, you're a cop. Whether you
hands
were,
down,
hands down, don't even talk to me, don't give me your spiel, you're a cop. And so he was clean shaven, had hair and short hair, and so we gave him this wig, And it was like a, 80s rocker.
Yeah.
So he looked like right out of Guns N' Roses or something.
Sure.
And so I'm driving, he's in the passenger seat, and I'm gonna ease him into this with a street hooker, buy some crack. And so she hops in the, and now mind you, street people are very particular about hair, believe it or not. They know hair. They know real hair and they know fake hair. And so she gets in and I'm talking to her, and my partner up front, he turns around and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to hook my partner up with some crack or whatever, and she looks at him and she goes, why you got a wig on?
Oh man.
And his face, and I had already formulated what I was going to say. And he just kind of looked there with a dumb look on his face, and he didn't know what to say. And I'm like, hey, go easy on my boy. He's got cancer. He's got testicle cancer. He's going through chemo. And
just
he lost
right
his, yeah. And I said, he lost his hair, and he's very uncomfortable about it. If you could do me a favor and just not make fun. And she goes, oh, boy, I'm sorry. And out comes the crack. We make the transition.
Went vulnerable real quick, right?
Yeah. And so, again, it's all in the presentation. You just got to... And after it was over, she looked at me, we cuffed, it was a bypass, so we cuffed her up right away. And she looked at me, she goes, boy, you are smooth as peanut butter.
So, yeah.
I'll never forget that. But,
yeah. It's almost like they respect it.
Yeah. Because, they do.
Right? Like, you got me.
Because they're usually the ones getting everybody else. And so she was a good sport about it.
Just that statement alone is so fascinating, right? Like you're in the... And that's what I've always found so intriguing about that type of work is like you are developing relationships with the, you know what I mean? And it's such a potentially high stakes game for both parties, right? Like you could, you've got death, risk, bodily harm, and they don't want to go to jail.
They do not want to go to jail. Jail's a horrible place.
Yeah.
From what I'm told, from what I've seen, it's horrible.
I've never had.
I know how hard I would fight if that was going to be my destination.
Wow.
So. Yeah.
It's just nerves of steel, bro, and it really is like that's a compliment. Like I mean it to be a compliment. Like you just have to have nerves of steel to kind of be in that, because not only do you have to be a good actor because you're selling, you're cover for action, cover for status type stuff, but man, I've always been fascinated by it. Very, very intrigued by the undercover stuff.
And probably one of the most rewarding character building units and tasks I've done in my career. I mean, it really set me up for my future, being bold. And now I will say that, when you're that age, and, I was in my mid-20s, 30s maybe I was 30, and it really, I didn't have anything that shook my confidence. If I would have had something really went sideways and I got shot or stabbed or something like that, it would probably have changed the way I would have conducted business. But when you're on that role and and things are working out for you really well, and you found your niche, and you're just really, you're really getting it done. It's a good feeling. Yeah,
I bet so. Yeah, really I bet it is. Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, how did you transition? At what point after you said you were a detective after your time in narcotics?
Actually, I went back to patrol right after I left that unit. I went back to patrol and was there for a short amount of time. I was active on the SWAT team then, and I actually had transitioned from entry team as an assaulter to sniper team. Been a long range shooter. Good part of my life. Was getting into competition shooting at the time with rifle. Shot the World Games there, the Police Fire World Games.
Oh, no shit.
Around that time frame. And working patrol one night, the whole life changed. It was July 2001, and get a call it's kind of a weird call. I was just coming off working a traffic accident, and I get a call to a hotel that I could actually see from where I was standing working this traffic accident. And dispatch just said that, hey, we got a caller on the line. Sounds a little frantic. There's some drug activity going on in room 220 of this hotel. And it was an older hotel that had all the rooms were facing inboard to like a courtyard. It was all covered. And so I was clearing the accident. I said, yeah, I'll head that way. I'm right here. And so we had just gotten body cams, and it was fairly new technology. So you had audio and video, but your repeater was in the car, and so you had to stay within a certain distance of your car for the video to be effective. And so I had mine on, and I get out at this hotel, and I make my way into the lobby, and I had not been in this hotel before. So I had no idea where this room was exactly. I had a good idea. It was on the second floor because it was room 220. I had number 6 in my head probably for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so single car call, no backup coming, just didn't require it at the time. And so walked in, and I'll never forget, I didn't think of anything was out of place at the time, but on the main level in the courtyard area, there was a pool table, and there were some guys playing pool there. So as I walked in, I'm kind of looking up, get my bearing on where this room was, and they look at me and just very calmly set the pool keys down on the table and just kind of walked away. Well, that's kind of weird. And so I make my way up to the room.
They didn't say a word to you.
Didn't say a word to me. Quickly made eye contact with me, and then.
Okay, I mean, you're in patrol uniform, whole 9 yards, right?
Weren't acting like they were up to no good and they didn't want to be around me. Just, it's like looking back on it, they knew something bad was coming.
Sure.
And
yeah,
so,
we don't want any part of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And so I get up to room 220 and knock on the door. Long pause. Door opens, and it's a guy, and shaved head, tall, slender, wiry build, wearing a wife beater, and attitude right away. Yeah, what do you want? And got marijuana smoke coming out of the room. And I'm like, well, actually I'm here for a call about drug activity, and I could smell the marijuana coming out of the room, and he had his hand down by his side. Again, it comes back to that all the years on patrol, learning body language.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell something just wasn't, and right away I'm thinking, he's got a gun in his hand, and his hand is down by his side, but it's kind of concealed behind his thigh. And I'm like, well, hey, can I come in? Who else is here? Because it was a female caller. So what I didn't know, and I'll just tell you what I didn't know at the time that I later found out, was this hotel room was rented by 2 females, fairly young, who were just up there enjoying themselves and ran into this guy in the lobby, and they vaguely remembered him from high school. Now this guy's in his 20s. And he said, hey, can I come up to your room and hang out? And they're like, yeah, sure. And so he shows up to the room with a gym bag full of prescription narcotics and a couple guns in the bag. So he gets up to their room, and they had no idea he was into this, according to them. And right. So he opens up the gym bag, pulls out a gun, sits it on the table, digs out some drugs, and starts making calls to set up some drug deals for people to come to that hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, we're not cool with this. Why don't you get your stuff and get. And he's like, no, just sit down, don't talk. I'm going to run some business out of your room. Well, one of them said she had to use the bathroom. Well, she went to the bathroom and called police. And that's how I got the call and ended up there. He wouldn't let him leave the room, so he was holding them hostage. And during that time frame before anybody showed up to buy drugs, I show up. And so, long story short, I won't make it too short. He wouldn't open the door up, and it had a safety chain on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately I was thinking, he's got a gun. Something's not right here. I could see one of the girls in the background, and she looked and she made eye contact with me, and she had this fear in her eyes that
you could tell right away. Yeah.
So I knew something was amiss. And as he tried to close the door, I shoved my foot in the door, and he kind of turned, went out of sight for a little bit, and just started yelling frantically, get away, you better get away from the door. And just at that moment, I had my gun out, kind of down by my side, and my backup, I had called for backup as soon as he answered the door. I'm like, hey, we got a male in here and got marijuana smoke coming out of the room. And so my backup showed up, I was able just to turn, make eye contact with him. He saw my gun. He knew something wasn't right. He pulls his gun. Before I could even say a word to him, I shoulder the door and break the chain and make entry into this room. And now he's got his back to me. He took 1 or 2 steps back from the door, and he has his hands in front of him. And so, show me your hands. So he comes up, he's empty-handed. I'm like, okay. So I transition over to pepper spray. He's not following commands, and all of a sudden he just takes off running towards the back of the hotel room. And as he's running towards the back of the hotel room, he is reaching out the front of his waistband. So, I wanted to answer with a little bit of aggressiveness. So I take off after him, and I'm closing the gap. He runs kind of over the top of the beds and towards the back of the room. And now the lights are off in the back of the room, and there's like a sink, and then off that area back there is the bathroom, the shower and toilet. And I'm calling out our code for gun, because as soon as he hit the bed, the gun comes out, and he's expecting to be on his right side, so he starts to turn right with the muzzle, and I kind of cut to the left. As we came off the bed, I just plow into him. I'm like, I got to squash this right away. And I get a hold of him and kind of get a bear hug on him and just ram him into the corner of the door frame going into the bathroom. And so now the fight's on. And clearly I can see now the gun, and you can just tell he's got every intention. He's going to use it. So lights very dim back there. Can hardly see. And we're throwing blows at each other. I'm trying to keep I have a hold of that arm that has the gun. And I get him wrapped up, and he headbutts me and knocks one of my teeth out on the side of my mouth. And I headbutt him back, and we're, exchanging little rabbit punches.
Standard procedure.
Yeah.
Return headbutt. I mean,
it's just brutal. It's like anything. When it's that close, it's going to be brutal. And I get him wrapped up, and I look down, and he's got the gun turned, and he's got it shoved into my side. And it's that tender area of your side that your buddies always walk up and grab and pinch. I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt, because it's where the bulletproof vest splits.
Yep.
I'm like, this is going to hurt when he shoots me. And I could see his grip on his fist is flexing, and I'm waiting for the report of the shot. The whole time I'm like, I got to end this. And in one motion, I kind of clamp his arm. I get my gun out, and I contact shoot him 3 times. And I hear the gun hit the floor, and we kind of fall into the bathroom. He dumps back into the tub, and I knew the gun was out of his hand because I heard the clank of it hitting the floor. So I reach over, I hit the lights, and it was over. And so some interesting things about that is one, he's still conscious and still in the fight, but he's trying to plug his holes. And they were all big holes, and they were all pretty good shots. And he's turning gray already. And I'll never forget, he looks at me in the eye, he says, "You killed me." And I've seen this several times since then. I think when humans know they're going to die, they know.
100,000%.
When it's up close and you're dealing with them, they know they're going to die. They just have we have this instinct in us. And he was right. He died right there. Auditory exclusion. So, I had never really researched kind of what the body goes through during like a deadly force encounter.
Yeah, the chemical cocktail and the auditory
all that stuff.
Yep.
And so all this was kind of new to me while I was going through it. But I remember the shots obviously sounded muffled. But what was interesting to me is the brass. As my brass was ejecting, I could hear every time it tinked off the tile and then on the floor.
Right? Isn't that bizarre?
It's bizarre.
The little intricate details that you see, and then moreover, kind of what you may miss, right?
Yeah. The mind works incredible ways to keep you alive. And Yeah, so, I was carrying a SIG at the time, decocked, and got the gun put away, and recovered his, and then, yeah. Well, it turns out he had been robbing pharmacies up in Michigan, and that's where he got all these drugs. And he was wanted for some robberies up there, and they was bringing them back down to Indiana and hustling them out of the hotel rooms. And so, the timing, everything worked out. I walked right into it. You couldn't have planned it any differently.
What kind of weapon system was he employing? Like, do you think he was pushing it out of battery, or like how? Like,
well, that's where I was going with this.
Right?
He had a revolver.
Ah.
And I've been a gun guy most of my life, and as soon as I looked at it, I'm like, oh, that's a Taurus Model 85. And that's what it was. It was a Taurus Model 85. Well, it turns out they later find through forensics that when I remember when we came off the bed and I tackled him and we ran into that door frame, I remember his hand kind of went back because I hit him hard, and his hand hit that door. It was a metal door frame, and I remember a loud metallic sound. Well, it turns out what happened is when he hit that gun against the door frame, it smacked the cylinder and knocked it out of battery, and broke an internal mechanism on the cylinder. And
just rendering it inoperable.
Rendering it inoperable.
Holy shit.
And that's what the lab came back. And I'm like, well, that makes sense now. I remember hearing that. And also remember watching his hand. I just glimpsed down quickly, and I could see him, finger on the trigger, and he's trying to get a shot off into my side. And again, I could almost feel the pain of it, because I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt. I'm not going to quit, but it's going to hurt. And it could have went a totally different way that day.
Wow, dude. Wow. And it's like going back to it, like I said, like you can, pick out those little details and, trying to have some comedy in it. Like just the initial thought of this is going to suck.
This is horrible. That's been 25 years ago. And it, when I tell the story, this is like it happened yesterday. But I always tell young officers and even guys we worked with, when we're talking about training and guys are saying, hey, if a gun comes out, you need to start looking for cover. There's probably a time and place for that, but when you're that close, you're in close quarters, aggressiveness really pays off. If I would have broke some distance between us and had some standoff, well, now it becomes a fair fight.
Now it's a gunfight.
When I close that distance and just stay aggressive and stay on top of them, now the fight has changed a little bit. A bit more in my favor.
Yeah, holy shit, dude.
Yeah, so the cavalry arrived shortly after, and the two girls, as soon as the shooting started, and they scrammed, they were scared, they took off. Took us a day to find them and get the whole backstory, kind of what happened. It was leading up to it. Again, just like the rest of my life, man, I was surrounded by good people. I had good command, had a great chief, had a great mayor, and very supportive. And so when something like that happens, there's always they're going to convene a grand jury. At least in our county, we convene a grand jury. So there's going to be an indictment or no indictment, depending on the facts of the case. And so that's a process, and it takes a little while. So obviously I was on leave that was in late summer. So yeah, I was on leave for a few months, pending the grand jury convening and so on. And it came back obviously as a good shoot. But most of the stress, like you train and you train and you train. The actual event, although telling the story, it sounds stressful. The stress really comes afterwards.
Right.
When you're dealing with your name, your picture in the media, saying that, you're going to go to indictment for homicide. And you have family and friends who don't understand how the legal system works. And so they're calling you up, hey, are you going to prison? I'm like, well, man, I hope not.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Do you know something I don't?
Yeah.
And so that process is pretty stressful. There was no civil litigation that followed up, so I'm thankful for that, because it was pretty pretty cut and dry once they got the testimony of the two women in the room. It was pretty cut and dry. But meanwhile, as is my life, I decided to take a little time off and unwind. So I went up to the Boundary Waters with some friends and do some fishing. I mean, why wouldn't I, right?
Yeah, I mean, fuck.
It's a good way to relax. And so I am up on a little island in the Boundary Waters, having a lot of success with some walleyes, and wake up in the morning, turn the radio on, having a campfire, drinking some coffee, and airplanes hit the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I thought my life couldn't get any more interesting or move any more quickly, off we go.
Yeah.
So we sat around the campfire listening as the second plane hit. And, I had recently, before that happened, I had, and maybe you've read the story or heard the story, an airplane ran into, was it the Empire State Building back World War II time frame?
I think so, yeah.
Someone will correct us on that.
Sure. The internet will fix us for sure.
When the first plane hit the tower and we're listening to it on just a little transistor radio out in the middle of nowhere, I'm like, oh man, that's a horrible accident. And right away I thought, well, that's happened before. Bad weather, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, now a second plane is hit. And I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't good. This
is something else now.
This is intentional. Yeah, it's totally different. And I can still remember, it's one of those things you'll never forget if you were alive when 9/11 happened, where you were at, what you were thinking, how the news coverage of it.
Without a doubt. Yep.
Just the uncertainty of what's going on in our country. Is there more to follow? And then, the Pentagon happens and Pennsylvania happens. And so we sat around, we went out and fished a little more and came back, listened to the radio the entire time. Like, hey, we got to get into town because gas stations were already starting to raise prices on gas, and we had our car parked kind of a public access site. So we're like, well, we don't want somebody to steal our gas out of the car. And we're stuck out in the middle of nowhere. So we go into town, we find a cafe with a computer and kind of watch the internet, what's going on, and watch the TV coverage. We're in one of the best, most beautiful areas in the country for fishing. I'm like, I'm not going home. I'm going to finish this trip. So,
oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So I fished for a few more days, and we went home. And the day I got home, when I was a sniper for the SWAT team, we did a lot of our training down at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, kind of south of Indianapolis. I don't know if you've ever been down there.
I have. I've been at Atterbury.
Good ranges, old Army base. And the years I spent down there going to different schools and training, Naval Special Warfare runs one of their schools down there, and befriended a couple instructors down there, and one became a pretty close friend. And he was transitioning out of the Navy at the time, and he called me up the day after I got back from Minnesota, and it's like, hey, yeah, you want to be an air marshal? I'm like, oh, what? It's like an air marshal, they ride on planes, and oh yeah, okay, I've heard of them. I've heard of the unit. Yeah, that sounds kind of exciting. I said, I'm still on leave from the shooting and such. And he's like, I got a hookup over there. He's like, let's go be air marshals. I'm like, all right, let me think about that. And so grand jury came back, no indictment. I got all that stuff settled. They brought me back to the PD, started working again. And within a couple of weeks, I'm like, hey, I'm going to give this air marshal thing a shot. And so contacted him. He went through vetting. I went through a week later, passed the vetting, flew home. They called and said, hey, we want to hire you. We're going to stand up a field office in Chicago. It was the closest hub to me in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, since then, life has been moving along pretty quickly.
It's such a crazy way to kind of fall into something like that. And what I don't say fall in, because obviously you had to pass selection or vetting for it, which I'd love to hear all about. But just kind of like looking back on it now, kind of the way things turned out, like had you missed that phone call, right? And or right,
Yeah. had that shooting not happened, I would have had a different perspective on police work altogether. Because even when things, as easy as it was for me getting through all that, you know, it still takes a toll. It takes a toll on you. You're splattered in the news. Everyone is second guessing you.
It's got to be tough.
It's just tough, and it shakes your confidence a little bit. You're dealing with the public, and you're like, hey, you know, I know you. You're on TV. You murdered that guy. Like, I didn't murder him.
Yeah.
It's the way it worked out. He murdered himself. And so I knew that, this isn't sustainable forever. And so I'm like, moving over to the federal side offered, better pay, better benefits, more retirement. And I thought this might be a good move. I had a daughter who, at the time of this incident was only 4 months old. And I'm like, I want to make a better life for her. And so, took the job.
So do you think even had the Air Marshal phone call not taken place, did you think you were exiting? Was that incident enough to exit from the police force, do you think?
Not right away. Eventually. It
kind of planted that seed.
Yeah. I think if that had not happened like that, and then, the war kicked off, I probably went right back to the military and went over. Mm-hmm. So, which would have been probably a worse decision for, my daughter,
right,
and eventually son. So, so we can't control that, things like that. They happen, for a reason, for sure. So I made that transition from the police department over to the federal side, and I was a second class to go through the Air Marshal training post 9/11, and my buddy was in the first class, and our classes were only 30 people maybe.
Mm-hmm.
They were fairly small, and I think the goal back then was, hey, we want to put 400 guys. Their goal was like 400 guys in the air as quickly as we can. And so they were taking prior service, military, SWAT, any type of specialized training. They wanted to get those guys in there quick and get them up in the air because they didn't know if this was going to turn into a thing where aviation industry was going to be targeted. And in a very short amount of time, I think in September 11th, and I think in November, I was wheels up, heading to training.
Wow, that was quick.
It was a quick transition.
And what did the training consist of once you got to where you were going?
Very, very pistol heavy. So what I'm saying isn't a secret. Initially, pre 9/11, there was a very small group of air marshals, very talented, very skilled men. Shout out to Clay and Scott, the two that were assigned to our office. And so they kind of headed up what was really then a limited amount of field offices. And two of them got sent to Chicago, and they kind of already had a program set up for what they were looking for. And so the initial classes were they brought in contractors from specialty,
tier one elements,
and put us through the training. So very pistol heavy. I mean, we would spend first half of the day every day doing nothing but shooting. Very shooting heavy. And then they would sprinkle in, you had to get your law classes and your, we were just 1801s at the time. Mm-hmm. So they had to cover those bases, but it was really focused just on fighting and shooting. So.
Yeah, I'd always, so we shared probably share a mutual acquaintance, and I was telling you at dinner last night, he was, we were hanging around if I was home on leave, and he was one of the first, to my memory, if he was sitting here, he might correct me. But to me, seemed like he was definitely one of the first, if not the, very early on classes, and just always, and he was an Army veteran and spoke very, very highly of the combatives, Gracie heavy, if not Gracies themselves, like correct me if I'm wrong, and the marksmanship standards were just through the roof,
No room for error.
Right.
Airplane has a lot of people tightly packed in, so you can't just, oops, sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's pretty heavy. on shooting. So yeah, we had the Gracie team out there for the ground fighting, and that lasted throughout the entire portion. Great group of guys, just salt of the earth, skilled, and took us from 0 to 60, 0 to hero in no time at all. And then the shooting portion, again, I had trained up as much as I could. I thought I would, compared to my peers, I was really, really a solid shooter. But like anything, sports, if you're like the best football player at your high school, you go over to a big city and
somebody just eats your lunch.
Just eats your lunch, So you're only as good as the people that are around you.
Sure,
so I started surrounding myself with really good shooters, top tier shooters, and just trained my brains out, even before getting there in that short time I had. And once there, I took it to the next level. The standards were they were tight. It was all business,
I was going to ask, how did they run? Was it, because you've obviously been through a fair amount of selections, myself as well, right? And every selection kind of has their own feel to it. Was it very gentlemanly, or was attrition the mission, or was it like, here's the standard, hope you meet it, have a good day?
Yeah. Wasn't quite a gentleman's course per se as maybe some of the ones we went through in GRS, but it was, believe it or not, we had guys in my class, no military, no police, never fired a gun before in their life.
Wow.
They were, most of them were from New York, and they were a little upset about what took place. And had somebody else run their businesses, and they're like, I'm doing this for my country. I will not put up with this.
That's fucking badass.
I'm going to dedicate my life to putting a stop to this so it never happens again. Incredible guys. And
that is super cool.
Those instructors were able to take somebody like that and get them through the process. And again, this is one of those processes. You've probably seen some that they're lax on some things, on standards. There was no, you meet the standard or you don't. Don't care who you are, your background, what you did yesterday, how much money you have. Either you meet the standard or you don't.
Yep, the end.
The end. And so got through that process, and then towards the very end of the training, it's qual day, So now it's time to put up or shut up.
Yeah, here comes the clipboards.
Very much secretive as far as they didn't share a lot of information with us. We knew what the standard was, and it was a difficult standard. And everybody there left something to be there. They left their job. I gave up my police job. People gave up their businesses. They gave up, careers. These weren't young people. These are guys in their 30s, that have a career and a family, and they gave that up. And if you don't pass, guess what? You can try to get your old job back, but that might not happen.
Yeah,
so there's a lot on the line.
Yeah, it's an incredible amount of stress.
So put that stress on top. You're shooting for your job, and you're shooting for your career. And so qual day rolls around. We get out to the range, and it's in the desert, and it's early, and it's cold, and it's windy, and like biting cold where your hands are numb if they're not covered, which not conducive for pistol shooting, And they pull up a couple 15-pack vans. They park them on each side of the range, and they tell you straight up, hey, if you pass, you're gonna go get in that van. If you fail, you're gonna go get in that van. They're like, oh, okay, I'm down with this.
Yeah.
And so one at a time, and you're doing it in front of all your peers, and so, which even adds more stress. Right?
Oh, for sure.
And so you step up and you shoot this. I'd have to look. It's like 12 courses of fire, back to back to back. And very tight time standards, small targets, and no room for error. And I think you're allowed to miss, maybe a miss or two. And when I say miss, it has to be like maybe on the line or just barely outside the line. It's pretty tight. And so I step up and I clean it. And I go sit in the one van. And they're filling up.
It's a 50-50.
Fairly equally. I think we had more on the pass side than the fail side for sure. And you're looking over to see who's sitting in the, I won't call it the loser van because everybody put their heart into it. You're trying to see who didn't make it, and I'm surprised at some of them. because of the backgrounds that they had there. And
I mean, anybody can have a bad day on the range, right? It just as well as I do.
Right.
Right.
You could be the best of the best and it just wasn't your day, or something. You got hung up on a piece of clothing. Something just didn't go your way. And so last guy shoots, and they're like, okay, you guys, the winter van, you guys just go to chow, and we'll link up with you later. And the other van, I found out later, because I never saw those dudes again, they took them back to the barracks, and they never shut the motor off. They're like, go inside and gather all your gear, everything you own that you came here with, and be back in the van in 10 minutes. And they come
so brutal.
Brutal.
Yeah, just brutal.
And they get back in the van. They drive them from there to the airport. And, the FAA was running the program at the time, so they already had tickets and everything set up for them.
Yeah.
See ya, go home.
Oh, ouch.
So, yeah, ouch is right. So from there, we went on to some more advanced training on aircraft, both there and back to the main training facility out on the East Coast. And that lasted a few more weeks. Got to come home just for a short amount of time, a couple of days, and then report to Chicago field office. And I remember walking into the office, a big old, at the time, it's not there anymore, or the office isn't there anymore. It was a big DOD building, huge. And as far as you can see, just cubicles and desks, and there's just a couple dudes at the very end. And one of them was my buddy. And we get there, and there's 7 of us, like that was Chicago field office at the time. There's 7 of us. Yeah. And two of the guys were the original guys. And so we're getting set up with air operations, and we start running missions right away on the planes. Yeah, fast turnaround.
Well, and so that qualification, that was, like, what other milestones or qualifications did you have to go through in the training process? Was it, I'm assuming very scenario based. What were some of the other boxes you had to check other than that marksmanship standard?
A lot of, and there's always an academic portion to that. So your law classes, they got to check the boxes on all those to make sure you understand search and seizure law.
Which I'm sure you kind of breezed right through.
I breezed through because, it was fresh in my mind. Just a few months ago, I was living it. And a lot of marksmanship, fighting standards, physical standards, and then I remember a lot like CQB and a lot of scenario-based, nearly every day, if I remember right, where they had live role players, and kind of like we do, or we did at work, where you might do a couple scenarios a day where they tell you go into this building that's set up like a restaurant, and they tell you sit down, and now we have, a scenario unfolds in front of you with live role players, and it's just decision making.
It's decision making, right? They're just, evaluating, right?
Yeah. Are you going to be a clear thinker when you're under stress, or are you going to just lose your mind and do something stupid? Just to see how well you perform under stress over and over again. On buses, eventually they brought in some airplanes. That's a whole other story, and we were working on live airplanes. Doing that, shooting in very tight quarters. Had a lot of training scenarios that were set up like the fuselage of an aircraft where very, very little room for error. You better know what you're doing before you do it.
So I have a question where, because was the environment that once you passed, and go through the scenario-based training, and once you pass that, we'll just call it the final exercise, which is that marksmanship, 12 courses of fire, right? Was it a continued evaluation even after you were ominous dominus? Like, did you have requalifications or anything? How did they maintain those high standards? Or
once you reported to a field office?
Correct.
Yeah, once you reported to a field office. Now this is a lot of this has changed since. This
Sure.
is very early on.
Because you're borderline, almost a plank holder in the process, right? Like you're very, very new.
Very new. We didn't have a training department set up yet. My friend that was already at the field office had a great background in the SEALs and also with training, and so he started setting that up right away. And so just in that short period of time, let's say in the first couple of months we were there, we were both flying missions because there's still a lot of stuff. The Olympics were going on, the Winter Olympics were going on at the time. And so a lot of important flights they wanted us on. And then in addition to that, trying to set up a training program to maintain qualifications. And so it was always continuous on qualifications. And I don't remember, we were shooting at the time the same standards that we shot to get the job.
Right.
So the standards didn't drop. And so we would do train ups. I think we shot at least once a week, twice a week sometimes. And then we would shoot the standards. Eventually it ended up being quarterly. Or once a month. So anytime you shot the standards. And if you didn't pass the standards, you went off flight status.
They kind of ground you for a minute until you
ground you until you get some remedial training and pass them. Again, all that's probably changed now because the qualifications and the standards have certainly been lowered over the years by a lot. And people will contest that. And the guys that have been around since the beginning know what the standards were and what they are now. And so there's really no contesting it.
Well, I would think, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, like, I think that has to be by design when you have kind of a program like that in its infancy. Like, we have to, for lack of a better term, like, we got to put our best foot forward, right? We got to have the standards super, super high where only the best men and women, so to speak, right? And then, kind of lay the foundation and then eventually, because you don't, if you start off with mediocre standards, you're going to have mediocre, success theoretically, right?
Yeah.
And so, God forbid, it's not just the apex of performance. And then once the program kind of gets its legs, not, because it's not like the scenarios are going to be any less dangerous, but
right.
just to get that amount of humans in those spots, right?
Right. And, a lot of it, as with GRS, it's not always about marksmanship, cleaning the X-ring every single time. How do you move with that gun? What are your weapon handling skills? Because you can't have somebody that's moving around an aircraft with their finger on the trigger and somebody bumps them and they let one go into the cockpit. I'm no pilot, but that just seems like it
seems
would be
bad.
Seems bad. Seems very bad. Yeah. So we look for a lot of that. How are your weapon handling skills? When the pressure is turned up, are you maintaining your muscle discipline? Are you aware of what's going on around you? So your head's constantly on a swivel. You're, it's all encompassing. There's no worse place I can imagine fighting it out than on an airplane with a bunch of frantic passengers, right? Mm-hmm. And so,
and to your point, right? It's the marksmanship standard stuff is always obviously super. That's high on the priority list, right? But it isn't. But like, I was unsuccessful at a selection for the sister program of GRS where I was, and this isn't me being Tommy Tough Knuckles, but having no issues whatsoever with the marksmanship standards. I'll just say that, right? Like, I was having zero issues with it. I was just at that stage of the game. I was at, an apex of my proficiency, right? But the cadre, once I was told to kind of pack my shit, they went, hey, do you know why you're being relieved or dropped from selection? And of course I had an answer, I said, well, it's not for my marksmanship skills. I can tell you that. And they were like, hey, it's not just that, these are the types of things that we were looking for. And, so on and so forth. And I was invited back and obviously went a different direction, but, that kind of blew me away at first. I was like, hey man, like like you said, I'm knocking the 10 ring out of this. No issues every time, well under time. But I just apparently wasn't what they were looking for. You'll have that.
Yeah. And, I've been through enough vetting. There's been a lot of times we've shot for our jobs since then. And if I know the standard up front, and this goes for most reasonable people that we work with, if you know the standard up front and you know that it's black and white. So I'll just use an example of if a Marine instructor is running the training and you're a Marine and you make that connection, hey, yeah, and that shouldn't change the standard. Either
Not at all, right.
Pass or you don't. And I will say that's one thing that's always impressed me with GRS and with the Air Marshals in the beginning was that if you come in there knowing the standard and you don't meet it, I'm man enough just to say, I didn't meet it. I get it. I'm out. Let me get my stuff. You don't need to tell me to pack my stuff. I'll see my way out, and I'll train harder, and I'll come back, and I'll give it another shot. But it's always when there's gray area and you get like an indecisive staff. That's when feelings get hurt and like, wow, this guy passed and I saw him shoot and he's horrible.
Right. Well, yeah, there was a little bit of that. Yeah. Like
it ebbs and flows, I know,
sure.
with our operation sometimes, but,
well, we had, kind of funny story behind that. Like that was the first post-military selection I had been to was, for that other sister program. Mm-hmm. And it was run very, very strange, looking back on it now. And having been an instructor for as long as I was, I could kind of see, like, oh, okay, those 4 dudes over there, they're good. They're in. The rest of us, we'll see. So it wasn't really. I mean, people were just dropping like flies. And for anything, if you looked at them the wrong way, you were going away. And so. I think it was obviously, it turns out it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise, but it was the first time I'd ever been not successful at something, to that magnitude.
Hurts, right?
It stung bad, and I'm like, holy shit, man, I can't believe I didn't crush that, and I was so scarred from it because we weren't even allowed to speak. You know what I mean? Like it was very, very over the top militant to the point where when I sat down for the first time, I don't want to say I was late, but I took the first chair, like the only open seat in the quote unquote classroom of the selection was just, center stage, this chair. And I sat down and there's 24 dudes in the room and no one's making a sound. And I was like, what? Well, what's going on, guys? And they were like, don't talk. They're listening, and I was like, who's listening to what? And of course, so I'm already, not getting it. I didn't get the in brief, but when I showed up to selection for GRS, Global Response Staff, for the audience, everyone was kind of laughing, joking, having a good time because back then, as you well know, like, and maybe it was different when you went through because you were a little bit older in me in the process. Like you had vetting, which was that 2-week, very high attrition. My vetting class, I think there was 2 of us, maybe 3, if I remember correctly, out of the entire class that was selected to go, and then obviously TDC right after that. Like I did TDC, back to back. But so the TDC crew, they'd already been on the job for quite some time and they're laughing and joking. And I can't distinguish one from the other. And so I'm just sitting there. I'm like, last one of these I went through, I'm pretty sure I got dropped for laughing and talking.
I'm not saying a word.
I'm like, all you motherfuckers are getting dropped. If it's anything what I just went through. And of course it wasn't, it was did run very differently. Right?
Mine was quite different. My experience with that was quite different, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and back to the Air Marshal, as we digress. What is the op tempo like for once you start flying missions? What is that op tempo like?
Oh, they wear those guys out. Again, I can't speak to what it is today. Most of the guys I came on with are now retiring. They're of that age, and so just flying. Even if I'm going to go train somebody someplace, if I fly for the other side of the country, I'm wore out. Mm-hmm. And they're doing this back to back. East Coast, West Coast, overseas flights. So it's a pretty fast tempo. At the time, we were doing some overseas at the time, but I transitioned into the training department because, again, we kind of founded it and developed the whole firearms training. And my buddy was running it, and I was the lead instructor. And so for a short time, we were training, and then we'd pick up a mission 1 or 2 a week. And then eventually it came when we had enough people there to cover the flights. We were strictly a training facility. We got a rotation of all the agents, put them on the schedule. You're flying a couple of days and you're going to come in and train for a day, whether it be ground fighting, go out and fly for a day, come back. We're going to go out to the range, do firearms. So it was a good tempo. I just don't think they took into consideration, and a lot of this is coming out now, I know, of how hard flying every day is on the human body.
Right.
And there's been studies done, there's lawsuits. It's just not good for you. Mm-hmm. And I quickly found that out.
You had made mention in a previous conversation that politics or politicians kind of ruined the program. Did you want to unpack that at all?
I'll go into it a little bit. So 2001, 2002 were all good years. As far as air marshals, I think the 9/11 was still pretty fresh in everybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
But as that wore off, the American public, as you know, has a very short memory. And now the war is going on in Afghanistan. And it seems like the Air Marshal program was supposed to be 400 very specialized people. Someone got the idea, maybe we need like 4,000. And
was that the number?
Yeah, that was the number.
Holy shit.
And let's do it in a year. And this was in that 2002, 2003 timeframe. And so let's lower, no one will ever admit to it, but I was there. I know what the standards are because I would get the policies that I have to enforce. Let's lower the standards both on hiring. Let's lower the pistol standards because we're just washing too many people out. We're spending a lot of money hiring these people, training them, only to have them wash out, and we're only getting, 30, 40% of the people that we hire. So let's lower that standard where it's still effective, yet we can get some more people passed. And then you know how that goes. It just snowballs from there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I know. You know exactly right.
Let's hire a lot of people that are already in the federal system, whether it be Bureau of Prisons or Border Patrol or whatever, because it's easier because we can just do a lateral transfer and get them here quickly, get them trained up and get them in the air. It was all about numbers, and I get it. You want more people in the air.
Yeah. There's always that I don't even know what you would call it, whether it's animosity or, if you went through what you went through, right? And then as you're seeing those standards kind of drop, like two things always kind of pop into my head. Well, the immediate thing is, these new FAMs or Federal Air Marshals, like they're not as good as us because they didn't have to meet the same standard, right?
Correct.
And then at the same time, a little bit older, wiser, and mature go, well, they don't have any control of that. You know what I mean? It's not like they said, hey, it's like they didn't make the decision to lower the standards.
That's exactly it.
But there's always going to be kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it almost, it presents them at kind of like, what do I want to say? Like at a disadvantage as far as camaraderie. And is that fair to say?
It's fair to say.
And
it's also fair to say that guys that have a lot of talent, a lot of skill, and are very proud of what they achieved to get where they're at and be a part of a unit that has that type of skill, right away they're like, I'm out of here. This may not be for me.
Yep.
If you really care about things and you don't want to see a great program, and it was a great program in the beginning, watching it dissolve in front of your eyes, it's like, there's other things I can go do. There's other people I can go work for that can utilize me a little bit better than this, because obviously they don't care enough to keep the high standards. So
were you in that boat?
I was in that boat. By end of 2003, I started. We started a mentor program, and I would go out and mentor some of the guys that were coming through training and seeing what the training looked like compared to what I went through, and I'm like, yeah.
I'm out of here.
I'm I'm going to look for a place to land, and I did. And one day I get called up from my boss, and he's like, "Hey, we got a guy here that became an Air Marshal, and he just deployed with his Special Forces National Guard unit to Afghanistan. Did a tour, a year tour in Afghanistan, and now he's back. And we need to get him on flight status, so we need to get him a qual. Can you take him to the range?" Shoot with them for most of the day and qual them and get them back on flight status. I'm like, yeah, I got it.
And what year is this?
2000, end of 2003, early 2004.
Okay.
And so I take this guy to the range, and it's pretty mellow, and he's telling me about Afghanistan, and he said, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. He said, I'm never going to fly for the Air Marshals. I'm like, you're not? What do you mean? He's like, I'm only here because I'm trying to burn up a little bit of time, but I am going to be a GRS guy. I'm like, well, what's that? Tell me about that. And so he tells me about it. And I had heard, I had a couple Marines in Air Marshal training that in 2001 were telling me about a group called GRU. I think it used to be called GRU a long time ago. And they were discussing it one day, like, hey, have you ever heard of GRU? I'm like, no. And he's like, yeah, there's this CIA group that really highly skilled, and they kind of like shadow people and, watch over, intel gatherers to make sure that, they're safe. And, well, that sounds cool. And we talked about it for a little bit, and that was the last I had heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he mentioned it. He's telling me about it, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So we shoot for the rest of the day, and he's like, man, you're pretty good. And I'm like, well, that's what I do all day long is shoot pistol. We're shooting. I used to keep a round count, for my weapons, but I think
hundreds a day.
Oh,
easy.
Like 50, 60, 70,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon. We had that ended towards the end, but we had unlimited amount of ammo.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot as much as you want. They would encourage us to shoot,
mm-hmm.
encourage us to go to competitions and shoot civilian competitions. Anything that can improve your skill level, our command was behind.
Which is pretty common in like the early stages of anything like that, right?
And it
like,
should be, right?
Right,
that's where you get people spun up, ready to fight. And so he tells me, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna finish up here today, and I'm going back home. I'm just gonna mail my creds and my gun, FedEx it back with my letter of resignation. I'm like, all right, well, hey man, thanks for spending the day with me, and we got to shoot all day. And
had he already been through vetting or selection?
I don't know if it sounded like he had been. He didn't come out right out and say, but it sounded like he had it locked in. And
I was gonna say that's a bold move.
Yeah, he didn't care,
Yeah.
So we finished the day, and we're in the vehicle driving back. He's like, how long are you gonna stay here? I'm like, I told him I was pretty disenchanted with the whole program.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, hey, I'm gonna give you a phone number and a name. He says, I want you to call this guy, tell him I sent you. And he said, he's GRS, and we're looking for guys like you. I'm like, okay. And I didn't think much of it, and dropped him off. That's the last time I saw the guy, right? And so here I am with this phone number and this piece of paper, and something happened that I had a bad day, at work next day or two. And I'm like, I've had it. I called this number, and they're like, I said, hey, so-and-so told me to give you a call. You may be interested. And I tell him a little bit about my background. He's like, yeah, I think we could use you. He said, why don't you come out and vet for us? I'm like, okay, what's that look like? He said, well, I can't tell you much.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I didn't even know who we were working for, really. And he says, if you're interested, I'll email you a plane ticket right now. This is what you're going to bring. You're going to stay here for a few weeks. I'm like, well, I can't take a few weeks off of work. And again, bad day at work. I'm like, I'm out. So as soon as I had that bad day, I walked into my office, typed out my letter of resignation.
You did.
Handed it in. And it was the first time since I was like 15 that I didn't have a job.
Wow.
I didn't have and drove back to Indiana, and I had a date to go vet. So again, I was training my brains out, just trying to get ready for it, and took a plane out and vetted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite a process.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
So I vetted under the legendary guy that you probably heard of. I won't even say his name. He's pretty well known. He ran a very, he was a SEAL. I think he was a SEAL, old SEAL Team 6 guy. And it was a no nonsense. And I didn't know any of this at the time. I just knew I was going to vet for this group, and it was going to be pretty high standards. And so I show up, and there's 13 of us. We show up for vetting, and we were out in the Maryland area, that area. And so, I'm sorry, no, we were in Virginia, up by West Point. You probably know the area I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I show up there, and it's a series of Conex boxes made in like offices, and he sits us down, and he's like a man of few words, and he's just like, nothing, you're not going to impress this guy. You can just look at him.
Yeah.
He's a man's man, and he's just like, I'm looking around, I'm talking to some of the guys, and there's only 2 Marines, me and one other Marine. And you know this guy, who he is. And he was not recon, not anything. He was an embassy guy, very squared away, very skilled. And then the rest of them were SF and SEALs, and I think there was a Ranger. And the instructor gets up front. He says, listen, he said, I'm a SEAL. I don't give a rat's ass about these other SEALs here. We have a standard to meet. I don't care what you did yesterday. I care about what you can do today. And that stuck in my mind. And he says, everyone's going to be treated equally. If you don't pass, if I tell you don't pass, I don't want to hear any back talk. This isn't the job for you. Go do something else.
Yep.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, now I know where I stand. And so I was kind of honored just to be there sitting in a seat amongst these guys, because these guys, some had already had one combat tour under them, and they were
extensive resumes. And not that you didn't. I mean, obviously you had, you know what I mean? Like you had
these guys
extensive.
were like skilled dudes. And everyone, we're all in our 30s, probably closer to 40 than 30 at that time. And so it begins, and his instructions were pretty simple. He's like, at 7 a.m., I'm leaving. I'm going to go do some stuff and have lunch. I'm going to be back here at noon, and I'm going to test you on blah, 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 vehicle bailouts. Okay. And he leaves. And the room is silent, and everybody's looking at each other. It's like, that's very little information.
Yep. By design.
What techniques do you want us to use? What's the standard on pass or fail? So many questions. And now I'm like, oh, I'm in way over my head. And so we had some rentals outside. And so we go outside, and, everybody kind of putting their experience together.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think he might want it like this. Yeah. The guy's like, oh no, I think he's looking for this. And so we're just kicking ideas around, and we're just working amongst ourselves. And noontime rolls around, and as promised, he shows up, and he's like, okay, show me what you got. And we start running through scenarios, and this is day one. And we run through a bunch of them for the rest of the afternoon. And he's like, okay, everybody back in the trailer. And this office was 2 trailers connected. So you had 2 classrooms separated just by a service door. And he's like, okay, I got a list of names. And there was like 1 or 2 instructors with him that were monitoring and taking notes, and you could see him writing stuff down.
Yeah,
which made you more nervous.
Yeah, clipboards and the meanie face. Yep.
The whole works. And we're shooting simunitions and paintball, and we're it's full go. And he reads the list of names, and he's like, okay, you guys, if I call your name, go in this other room and sit down. And so he's calling out names, and these guys are going, and it's like 4 or 5 guys on the first day. And he's like, okay. He's like, I'll see you guys at 7 a.m. And we're just like, anything else? He's like, get the hell out of my office. I'm like, all right. And so we get up and we leave. And someone's like, well, what are these guys? He's like, I don't care what they do. They're just not doing this job.
Don't worry about them. Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So we show up the next day, very similar. Now we're doing CQB. And it's the same thing. He gives us 4 hours of practice on our own, not knowing what he's looking for. And
in close quarters battle or close quarters it's so subjective, right?
It is.
Like there's so many 10 different dudes, you're going to get 11 different answers.
If you want to see a bunch of grown men fist fight in a parking lot, have them agree on what the best way to do CQB is, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And we still go through it. We have not learned our lesson. There's a lot of right ways to do it. And so he calls us back in the office at the end of the day, and now he's like, okay, if I call your name, go in the other room. And I'm like the second name called. I'm like, all right, I didn't make it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you had the opportunity at the time to be a static guy, which is, and you could come back and vet again once you learn what was going on. And so I'm like, I was very comfortable. I'm like, I did my best. I thought I did a really good job. So I go and I sit down, and 6 of us end up in that room. I'm like, man, they're cutting a lot of guys, And he comes into that room, and he's like, all right, I'll see you guys at 7 a.m. You made it. The other guys, I don't
just
care what
switch the rooms on you.
Switch the rooms.
Yep.
And so now, and every day it was something different.
And because they want to see how you're going to react.
They see how you react.
Yeah.
And so this goes on for, there was days I didn't cut anybody. And this goes on for, I don't even remember now, a couple of weeks. It's just always something. And we're running scenarios, role players, live role players. We're doing some live fire stuff. And we're going on and just kind of building up. And finally it gets down to 3 of us. Me, this other Marine, and an SF guy, a SIF guy, which is a you can explain what the SIF guys are just entry guys.
Yep, that's
specialized in CQB.
Yep, that's their bread.
Very
and
highly. This guy was very highly skilled, and actually, he's not with us any longer. Unfortunately, he not with us, but he was kind of instrumental in when we were practicing CQB. He had a lot of insight and kind of helped us out on what this guy's probably looking for.
What they're looking for,
he was
right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was me, Marine, and him, and he comes in with a straight face, no pat on the back, like, all right, man, we think you guys are good to go. And I was, you're always on the bubble, like you don't think you're gonna make it,
You're right.
I recognize my mistakes I made when I went through. I'm like, man, I hope nobody, and they don't miss a thing.
Right.
These guys are very, very, seasoned instructors. And it's like, yep, that was a mistake. If I get cut for that, man, I get it. I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had already accepted I was going to be, just working static security, whatever. But yeah, made it. And they were like, okay, we're going to get you some passports and you guys are shipping out. Like, well, now I have a son and a daughter, and I might need a little bit of time to, get things prepared. It's like, we'll let you go home for a few days, and then just stand by your phone. We'll be calling you. We'll get you some instruction. And so, yeah, now my life really took off.
It's a whole new chapter now, right? Yeah.
So we finished that. I think there was there was some ongoing training. TDC hadn't yet been developed, so there was the vetting kind of acted as it was. I don't know. I spent maybe a month or so, 2. I don't know what it was. Just training and so get home, pack my bags, and I get a flight to head out overseas, and lo and behold, someone lost my passport, and so that delayed me a little bit more, and so finally go into the office, getting shots. Well, yeah, you show up to deploy. And they don't tell you anything like what to bring, and so I'm trying
Zero
to
information.
Like, okay, I think I'm gonna bring an optic in case they don't have, because I know you get there and you don't have what you need. I'm gonna bring a plate hanger and bring these other things, and I didn't bring my shot record. No one said anything about shots. And so we get there and like, okay, there was a clinic in the office we were working at. They're like, run downstairs and have them look over your shot record. I'm like, shot record. No one said anything about a shot record. And
you're still probably in a little bit of a selection mindset where you're like, oh, shit.
Man, like, what am I going to do? And, and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. They'll take care of you down there. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'll just tell them what immunizations I've had, because I've had them all because of the first Gulf War, all the stuff. And so I get down there, and they call me back, and they're like, where's your shot record? I'm like, well, no one said to bring a shot record. I don't keep it in my wallet. And they're like, well, you guys are deploying like right away, like in a day or two. So your choices are, you can get all of them or you can not deploy. I'm like, well, I'm deploying.
You start rolling up your sleeve right away.
Roll up my sleeves. And she goes, you're going to take them all? And for the record, I hate shots.
Yeah.
I know very few people that
I don't think anybody right. And I don't think anybody enjoys
it. I get just thinking about shots, I get, sweaty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I hate shots. And so I'm like, hey, I'm curious, how many is it? And she's like, well, it looks like 11 or 12.
Oh, fuck.
And I'm like, she goes, oh, don't worry. We'll switch arms between shots. And like, that's going to make me feel better.
You're right.
She's like, roll up your sleeves. And so I'm sitting and so I'm the only one back there. And the rest of the guys that I'm deploying with are out in the waiting room waiting their turn. And they roll this big card in. And sure enough, there's 12 shots lined up. I don't know.
It's the toughest part of selection right here.
Horrible. Bro, I can't even tell you how bad it is. And so I'm going to be brave and be a big boy. And I sit up, and they got 2 nurses, and they start shooting me in my arms. And I don't remember when I nodded off, maybe number 7.
Oh, really?
And woke up on my back. And it's just a lot, both for the body to take, and I was just overwhelmed. And woke up on my back, and they're trying to give me orange juice, and I'm like, when did I nod off? How many did I get? She's like, well, you made it number 7. I'm like, okay, that's
all right.
That's presentable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I got to do this? She goes, no, once you passed out, we gave you the
just went, right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so I get up, stumble out to the waiting room. I sit down, and the guys are talking. Excuse me. And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, dude, someone passed out back there. Doctors were running in, and they were worried about this guy. I'm like, what a
bitch.
Yeah. Toughen up, for crying out loud. Right. We're going to war.
When did you tell him it was you?
I never told him.
No way. Oh, that's classic.
No, I was embarrassed. And from there, off to the races. Caught a flight to the Middle East, civilian flight. Bounced around until I ended up on an airfield out in Jordan someplace. And then caught an Air America flight. To Baghdad, I guess. Mm-hmm. And landed in Baghdad, and overwhelmed again. Really not much direction. So finally, my name got called, and they're like, "Hey, you're heading Western Iraq, Al Anbar province." And this is early 04 now. This is really early 04, and it's the Wild West out there still. But I didn't know that. I'm like, couldn't find it on a map, probably, and I said, okay. And they're like, go get your issue, get your rifle and everything. So I go get all my stuff. They're like, bird's going to take you out there in the morning. So morning comes around, caught a bird out there. And I've been up, nonstop now for quite a while. And still look a little shooken from the whole shot.
Yeah.
And so make the long flight out, again, land in an old airfield. My new team picks me up, and they're all good dudes, really good dudes. And one of them is the guy I was embedding with. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, familiar face.
That's so, when you see a familiar face, it's so, right.
And he's like, oh, man, hey, you made it, And he beat me there by a few days because the lost passport thing cost me a few days. And so they're like, dude, we're running some great ops out here. You're going to love it out here. I'm like, all right. It's like, hey, we got one going. Now we got in there in the late morning. He's like, we're running an op first thing in the morning. Like, we're going out at 0 dark 30, set up on this place, and meeting an asset. And he's like, you were a sniper, right? I'm like, yeah, I was a police sniper. I wasn't a military sniper. And he's like, yeah, good enough. Here, we got some stuff for you. And they give me a brand new SR-25 with fully set up with a night optic and everything. And they give me a can of 118 LR. Mm-hmm. And like, here you go, man. You're gonna be our sniper or counter sniper. I'm like, okay. They're like, all right, man, get some shut eye. We're leaving 03. We're heading out in the desert. I'm like, all right. Like, is this rifle zeroed?
Yeah, like at any point, you're like, hold on, what are we doing?
Yeah, what's the op? We'll give a quick brief before we go. I'm like, okay. Like, I haven't slept in a couple of days. I said, I couldn't tell you on a map where I even am. I appreciate your enthusiasm and your confidence in me, but can I take this rifle out and zero it? Yeah, there's a range at the end of the compound. Just go down there and, like a 50-meter range, zero this rifle. I'm like, all right. And so I go and zero it and get my gear kind of squared away, and I can't sleep now because now I'm amped. I'm like, oh, man, my first op, this is going to be great, And so sure enough, we load up in Land Cruisers, and we're just bumping through the desert for what seemed like hours, and we come up on this big like valley with a ridge, and they're like, all right, TL. I had a really good TL, retired SEAL, and he's like, I need you to climb that ridge and set up an overwatch position up on top of that ridge, and we're gonna do the meeting down here or whatever. And I'm like, all right, I scamper off and climb this ridge and get up there and get a position set up, and I'm doing overwatch, and the sun is just starting to rise, and when you had Josh on, he hit on the sun rises and the sun sets in the desert are just glorious. Yeah. And I remember I had all these weird bugs I couldn't identify crawling over me, but I didn't want to move. I wanted to stay still. I didn't want to get detected up there. And I'm just like, what am I doing?
Because
it was a nonstop like 70 hours. 50, of no sleep and just my environment has changed. I'm confused.
Yeah.
I don't, if I had to run out of here, I have no idea what direction to run.
It seems super loose in the beginning, right? Like it's super loose. Like, wait, hold on, what are we doing? But you can't. You know what I mean? Like you got to keep up.
And so I'm like, I got to get myself together here. And so the meeting went off really well. We got everything we came for. We do a recall. We load up and we head back to base. And from then on, it was.
Yeah, that first one's always crazy, right? Because everybody else that you're with, right, it's kind of just another day at the office, right? And you're facilitating or solving whatever complex problems that need to be, solved and operations facilitated. But when you're the new guy, and I can remember when I first showed up to my initial place, I grabbed the country C1, which would be the lead contractor, right? And I said, hey, man, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? It was the selection process was so hard skills based and, obviously all the scenarios and decision making and things like that. But I still didn't really feel like I had, and then maybe that's my fault. I didn't really feel like I had a firm grasp on what we were actually doing. And so you just OJT right away, you're on the job training, you're just figuring it out as you go and leaning on those teammates. But yeah, that first one it's a whirlwind for sure.
It's a whirlwind. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Mostly because you don't want to disappoint anybody,
right?
And so being the new guy on the team, you're trying to take up any slack and make sure everybody has everything they need. And I was really blessed with. I've always been blessed for the most part with just great team members. And so we finished up. Yeah, I ended up extending out there. Man, that was a long deployment, and it was rough. We did a lot of that was early on, and we were allowed to do a lot more. We had a lot of direct action stuff going on. We were assisting SIF, and First Force was out there as well. So we were doing a lot of target packages and
for First Force Reconnaissance for the Marine Corps. Yep.
Yeah, and it's funny because most of the guys, a lot of the guys on that team, on that rotation, we work for a lot of them work with us now, because me and another Marine that were on that first team were befriended a lot of them.
Sure.
And they were getting towards the end of that was their last deployment, and so they were looking for a place to work when they got out. And so, out of that group, and you would know all of them, 6 or 7 of them out of that team came to work for us shortly after.
Sure, it's just the way it goes, right? During the invasion, my first introduction to the organization, if you will, was my sniper position in Baghdad at the presidential palace. A guy in complete civilian clothes with an SR-25, you know what I mean, comes walking up and he's, kind of sniffing around. And, of course, I immediately thought I recognized or knew who I was talking to, or I assumed. And immediately was like, wish I had my resume, folded up in my whatever, because I was like, I wanted, just because he looked different. And he was by himself, and he, you could immediately he was older, kind of recognize that freedom of movement, that you may or may not have depending on what your, military occupational specialty is. And so I glued up to him right away, was trying to just, get any information I could, because I had aspirations, right, that wouldn't, come true until years and years later. But it doesn't surprise me at all when you get mill guys co-located with, something different or something, I don't want to say next level, but it is in some ways and it isn't, in others, right? And it's enticing, right? Oh, what's that? That's different. That's new. I want to go try that.
Because we were in a very secluded fire base, and we would go down to First Force because we interacting with Marines, and so we'd eat at their chow. They had a little makeshift chow hall set up, and we'd come in off of a mission, and we'd have back then we had grenades on us and suppressed guns and stuff that they weren't seeing, and right away they're like, man, first of all they come up, hey, you can't have a hand grenade in the chow hall.
It's frowned upon.
Well, I'm hungry and it's on me, so I can have it.
Yeah.
And well, who do you work for? It's well, not you or your command. So you want, and so we got to be good friends with these guys. And like you said, they look at you because we're different. They're like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And the whole time I'm thinking, man, I would I'd love to be a recon Marine. You know, I want to do what you're doing.
Isn't that funny?
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's just the way life works.
And for me, it was always kind of an age thing too. Like, because I was looking at this guy who's obviously considerably, and not, you know, he was probably in his mid 30s. You know, I was in my early 20s, and I'm like, I immediately saw a pathway to continue, like, I guess I would say, you know, Airfinger's quote professional soldier for well into my 30s and 40s, right? And there's only a few places that you can kind of do that, right? There's a few in the military, obviously, and then, you know, the 3-letter agencies are a good way to accomplish it. And then, of course, there's some not good ways to accomplish it that, you know, that I had no interest in. We all know those. Right, exactly. We've all got buddies that have done that. Yeah. But, I think it's an age thing, right? Or for me, it was. I was like, oh, there is a path to do this for a long time, should I choose to. And at the time, I'm sure, like, you know, I wanted to, you know. And when I showed up to selection for the not the second time, but, you know, TDC rather, that was one of the first things that you and I both know him. He sat down, and I was the only new guy there. Everybody else had already been on the job for a while, and we're checking that final box. And he looked around and looked at me, because I think I was 28 at the time. And he goes, "We're going to have to see if you're even old enough to be here." And I was like, oh, man, this is going to be a rough 30 days, you know. And super good dude, you know. But, yeah, it's, you know, I was young when I started. You know, I was considerably younger than most of the guys, you know. But anyways, I digress.
Yeah, I might have been a little older than a lot of them. Had, you know, a career behind me already. And I take that back. You know, I worked with a lot of groups that a lot of these guys did 20 years on the teams or with SF, and, you know, they were 5-6 years into this. So a lot of mature, just professionals. And, man, I learned a lot from them. Yeah, that first deployment was probably I learned a lot about how it works. But then you go to another area of the country, and
totally different
terrain, different TTPs. Everything just kind of changes, you know. And yeah, those first, you know, the 04 to, I think I stopped deploying in 11. And so I don't know how many I ended up with. I tell people, you know, and I'm not saying, I think I might have done 16 or 17 deployments. I quit counting a long time ago. And people hear that and are like, holy cow. I'm like, well, that's nothing. And we got friends.
Yeah.
They're probably nearing 50 deployments
Easy.
since the beginning of the war.
Easy.
I mean, imagine at 50, you know, they have more time in the Middle East than they probably have in the United States when you start adding it up. You know, it's
getting close.
Or getting close. And it's just, I don't know if that's impressive or just sad.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you could take it either way, right?
Yeah.
There was one guy, and I'm sure you know him because he would have been around your time frame. And just over, you know, cocktails one night, you know, around the campfire, somebody always starts well, how many trips have you done? I couldn't tell you either. At the time I knew, you know, when this conversation took place, where, oh, I did this many, and I've, you know, and everyone's kind of measuring, right, you know. And this guy goes, I did some interesting math the other day. He goes, I calculated how many hours I had been on the plane going to and from, and I can't remember, I'm going to butcher this, but it was I've actually spent 2.5 years in the air or whatever.
Going
back and forth, or, you know, I'm probably butchering it, but it was a substantial amount of time, you know, calculating the hours into days, into weeks, you know, that he was actually in transit from one place to the next, you know.
And I think that it speaks a lot about the men we work with. You know, when we were talking about your dad doing 3 tours in Vietnam, you know, when I was a young Marine before I joined the Marine Corps, if I had met someone that had 3 tours, it's like, oh, man.
100%.
Unbelievable. And then when I started deploying, I'm like, you know.
It's like we measure respect in time. Right?
Yeah. And if you watch Apocalypse Now, I'll mess up the saying, but he's sitting in his room before or between deployments or whatever, and he says something to the effect of, you know, when I'm over there, all I think about is coming home, and when I'm home, all I think about is being back over there. And that rings very true. When I was home, you know, I had a small homestead, so I'd take care of my gardens and you know, find some peace and tranquility in doing all that. And then that lasted for a little bit, and then, you know, I'm staring at my Pelican case thinking, okay, it's time to get back over there and get after it, you know, and so I lived that life probably for too long. Everybody has their limit, and I just, you know, life on the road is hard.
Yeah.
You know, it takes its toll. It takes its toll on you after a while.
Without a doubt, dude. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And like you said, everybody kind of hits their, and not limit in the sense of, oh, I no longer am able or capable of functioning. It's, you know, I think your priorities change, right? And when you first start out, you know, correct me if you, or, you know, agree or disagree, it's so new, it's so intoxicating, it's so exciting, right? It's easy to get sucked into that, and then nothing else matters, right? For better or for worse, right? And it's, you know, it's like an evil mistress that just keeps calling you back, right?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And then you just, you know, you hit that point where it's like, you know what? I'm okay, I think I'm good. You know what I mean? I'm good. You know, I'm going to go do something else or what have you. And, you know.
Or you have a few close calls, you know, and then you're like, you know, I'm not 18 Lance Corporal anymore. You know, I'm, you know, closer to 60. I am 50 right now. And it's like I still have that. I want to get back over there and get into it. But because it's exciting. It's the guys, too. We always talk about that. It comes back to
phenomenal dudes.
Phenomenal. The character, the background, the stories on how they got where you're at. You know, and if you're deploying, you're changing locations. You know, I finally gave up. But every time you know, a lot of times when you showed up, you didn't know where you're going to deploy to, what part of the country.
Right.
And you know, I always wanted to go back to the last place I was at because I had area fam and knew some of the guys and knew the area, kind of with the tempo of the operations. And it never failed. I would always get sent someplace else. And I was always in despair, like, new team, new guys, you know. And I would get there and I would meet a group of guys that I liked more than the last, if that's even possible. And it was like that every time. And so finally I just like, all right, man, here I am. Send me wherever you want.
Yeah, I don't care, right?
I don't care. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to meet interesting people. And the work is always good and interesting, usually, some more than other. But, yeah, I really enjoyed my time.
Yeah, me too, without a doubt.
The friendships that I built they'll last forever. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's a very exclusive club in the sense of, you know, not only was it super high standards, right? And, you know, selection was difficult. But I don't think, to your point, the relationships that you built with those, you know, guys and gals for that matter, you know, is just something to be cherished, right? Because people wouldn't believe you if you told, you know, some of the things that, you know, were average everyday Monday is like, wait, what did you do? You know, so pretty cool club to belong to.
I mean, I told you this, that most of my family and most of my friends have no idea what I did, who I work for.
They're gonna now.
They're gonna now probably. And one is because I just don't think they would understand. It would always lead to more questions and answers that I didn't have or couldn't disclose.
Didn't want it, you're right.
Yeah, I just can't disclose. So that's now that I'm almost out of the game, it becomes a little bit easier just to unwind and talk about it a little bit. But yeah, it was
good times, right? Good times.
It takes me back.
Yeah, it's a week-long episode if you went through all the crazy shit.
A lot of rough days, of course, that always comes with it. But I didn't make it to TDC. I deployed for 5 years before I made the TDC.
Yeah, it was pretty common back then. Yeah. Like I think my class, that was kind of the average, and even some that were even longer. You know, like, hey, they've been on the job for a considerable amount of time, and just through rotation or whatever, just I'll do it later. You know, and everybody eventually, you know.
And for the audience, TDC is just like a revalidation of your skill level, right?
Yep.
And so again, they didn't care if I had 5 years of deploying. Either you pass or you don't pass.
Yep. And that's obviously what most guys were kind of like, fuck, man, I don't want to go through that again. You know, like, I don't.
Today I have a job, tomorrow I don't have a job after I've done it for 5 years. But it's a good, you know, it keeps you on your A game for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, you know, I trained up on my own prior to going because they don't care what you did yesterday. They care about
right now.
What can you do right now?
Yeah, right now.
Are you skilled right now? Because there's other men relying on you, and you better be able to pull your weight and do what you're trained to do. Otherwise, go do something else.
And the line is long. You know what I mean?
Plenty of guys beating down the door trying to do it because there are a lot of hungry young men out there that are very capable and want their chance, want their shot at this. And so, I'm blessed and I'm so fortunate to have been able to do it, for sure.
Well, how long were you on the road rotation-wise until you transferred over to the training side of the house?
Deployable for 7 years, about deployed pretty solid for 7 years. And our deployment schedule, obviously they're not year-long deployments, but we might do 3 months, 2 months. And pretty, from the time you hit the ground to that, you're working for those 2 or 3 months, as you know. Depending on where you're at, you might be running a couple missions a day. It doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah. Some places are very,
very
busy.
Active. And if something goes really wrong, you may have a couple of days of downtime, which is kind of nice to catch up on things. But yeah, towards the end, I was still enjoying it a lot. I had met my wife over there. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me for sure. And she was stationed at the place we train at. She caught a rotation after she left war zones. She was down there, and so we were already dating then. And so she's like, "Hey, why don't you come down here and visit?" And so I came down and visit, and I was I was actually set to deploy like that month, deploy back, and so hit the chow hall. At the chow hall, you run into everybody you've ever met. And so I'm at the chow hall eating, and sure enough, I come across somebody like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just here visiting. I'm just between deployments." I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "Oh, I work here." I'm like, "What do you do?" And she's running one of the training facilities. She goes, "Hey, I'd really love to have you come. With your background, your experience, you could teach some of these guys that are going over, some of these agents that are kind of fresh. You could help out a lot and serve by teaching them." I'm like, "Well, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet." But she's like, "Well, when do you deploy?" I'm like, "Well, end of the month." And she's like, "Well, just come out and try it for a little while you're here. You're going to be here anyways. You might as well come out and try it and get paid."
She's working you. Yeah, she's working you.
And I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a shot." And did it. And well,
the rest is history.
The rest is history. I
Right.
never left. I got into the training portion of it. And it was very satisfying watching people that had never been over there before and being able to tell them, "Hey, this is what to expect. This is how you're going to get through it."
Invaluable, right? Like to have someone come back, especially someone with your, amount of time and past experiences, right? Invaluable to those young officers.
Yeah, so I had a lot of satisfaction, and a lot of it was firearms related, some CQB and combatives and stuff like that. And I thought, I can enjoy this, being not being shot at and being in a warm bed in a clean country every day. And so, I ended up marrying that beautiful woman, and she finished up her time as well. And so we're both kind of just finishing it all up.
Yeah, homestead full time, right?
Homestead and full time.
Yeah.
Chickens and bees and all the things that matter.
Did you, when you left, because I think I was present, or at least we were co-located geographically speaking. I don't remember the actual day, right? What was that feeling closing that chapter for the last time?
Oh man, it was rough. So, I don't know, 2021 or 2, I transitioned over to our group, started instructing a lot more of the precision rifle stuff. And probably the best group of guys that I've worked with to date. And so the last 4 years has been incredible.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal crew.
Meeting, your crew and our crew. For those of you who don't know, we work together and
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And super talented group of guys. And I thought it would never end. I'm like, I'm not leaving here. This is it, man.
Yeah.
I'll work here till I die because I enjoy every day coming to work, And a lot of people don't have that. Most people don't have that.
Yeah, it was an A team for sure.
I mean, if they say, well, we're not going to pay you anymore, I'm like, that's fine. I'll see you at 6 a.m. I'll be here because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And a lot of things changed in that program, as you know, and as they always do. Every program always goes through phases, and made it not so enjoyable anymore. Just really based on location and time away from family. And
yeah, it wears on you after a while, right? Like it's, you're pouring all your, when you're on an instructor cadre like that, and the tempo that we kept, it's long days and you're pouring every ounce of you. And I watched you do it. We all did it, which is why the cadre was so effective. Like you said, you could take individuals with, moderate levels of skill when especially on the precision weapon side, they may have never, ever shot a precision weapon ever. And what you and that cadre and, all the guys are able to do in a very short amount of time is that's something to be said for their level of subject matter expertise.
The evolution of our training has, all the stuff we're doing now, the training-wise, are all the things we wish we would have had during those deployments back in the day.
Without a doubt.
And I'm glad that they recognized, hey, we need this specialized training for our snipers and for our, for everybody. And they built an incredible program. The guys that came before Dan, they built an incredible training program that is really going to make a difference in the next war, which seems to be looming.
Yeah, it's kind of a good way to transition into the State of the Union, right? Like,
I mean, I'd like to touch a little more on those guys and just
please do,
because everybody, all the incredible people we worked with are now all in that stage of life where they're starting to move on. They're retiring. They just, they had enough.
Sure, and
they had their fill.
Yep.
You never think you can get your fill of it, but at some point in your life, you come to your fill. And
then it hits you hard. Like once you've had your fill, it's like a light switch, right?
And so my transition was made a little easier. So here's probably a bombshell for most of my family and friends that don't know that. About a year ago, almost a little over a year ago, shaving one morning, I felt a lump on my neck, and no one ever likes to hear that. But up to this point, I'm invincible, man. It's going to take more than that to put me down. So I just kind of ignore it for a little while, and I'm at work and I'm letting the guys touch it, and we're making fun of it, and painting pictures on it, and it's not going down. And so, long story short, it turns out throat cancer. I had a tumor on my tonsil, kind of getting in the back of my tongue, and then it kind of had spread out to the side of my my lymph nodes. So, I go through the whole thing, the VA. Get diagnosed and then started treatment a little over a year ago. And so
I remember.
Yeah. And so I had to tell the guys close at work because I had to take a little time off for all the chemo and radiation. And so did the whole chemo radiation path, which I don't recommend for fun for anybody. Don't do it unless you have to. I don't know why you would, and so took a little time off work and missed it so bad that I had to get back. Just to be around the guys, And so I was back on the range shooting long guns. I still had a feeding tube in and still had my port, the chemo and and it rested right where the buttstock rests. And so it was painful to shoot. It was painful to get into prone with tubes hanging out of my chest. And, it zapped me of a lot of energy. And so my contract was coming up, and I thought, and my wife took such good care of me. I couldn't ask for anything else. Just incredible angel. And so I thought, well, maybe now's the time to transition a little bit out of it. And about that time, coworker of ours, Lucky, had started his own company. With precision rifle and making thermal targets, Target Down Group.
Yep. Shout out to them.
So shout out to Target Down Group. And so I thought this would be a good transition. I had worked for Dan for quite some time. And so he brought me on as part of their staff. And so now I'm instructing for him in his courses, incredible courses. Basically, it's our course.
It's hands Pepsi. Take the Pepsi challenge with anybody.
We'll take you from 0 to hero in a week if you want to shoot long distance, and we can go as deep as you want, or we can do field craft as deep as you want, whatever you need. He's the guy to check out. So I've been doing that to kind of fill that void and make that transition, and it's still been hard. Luckily the team, and same with you, the team has kept me on their text threads.
Yeah.
So I'm still linked in with what's going on. Hey, what's going on with the team? And
yeah, they're gonna hear this and dump us off the thread.
It's probably coming. Yeah. I've seen them do it to other guys.
That's the nail in the coffin, right? When you get dumped off the thread. Yeah.
I'm very careful about how far I razz them on the thread because I don't want to be chopped off from that because that's like my life link right now, just to stay in touch with those guys.
Yeah.
But I still get to see some of them, and we still talk a lot. And so as long as I'm still out there on the range, getting some range time, I'm happy. So it's been not an easy transition. I still miss it every day, but it's going to happen one way or the other.
Well, you're a phenomenal instructor, and I'm not saying that just because we work together and I'm sitting across from you. You know what I mean? Like all of those guys, all of those guys are just absolutely. You just hit that point where you have so many reps and have put so many students in, and not only that, but stayed relevant through continuous training and things of that nature. Like, yeah, the boys from Target Down Group, are.
And I think this podcast is going to turn into something really big. And I wish we had the time to talk about each individual that we work with because they're such incredible men. But from our favorite dev group pirate that kind of the daddy of the whole group.
Yeah.
He was my mentor. I met him we were doing some ops down in South America where I met him.
Yep, I believe it.
Him and I, we would take, on our off time, he likes working with his hands. So we would take leather crafting lessons and just from out in town. And, the big ranger that's on your team, that guy, that's one of the best instructors I've ever met. But to take a guy like that, and obviously we can't say his name, but, a background of special education and ranger and UFC fighting and just larger than life, and you put it all together, I mean, you can't.
It would be very difficult to replicate.
You can't replicate it. So anyways, all you guys, you know who you are. I love all of you, and it's been a great ride. And
for
thanks
sure
for your brotherhood.
Yeah, and I don't think those doors ever close.
No, they don't. It just makes it harder to see them.
Yeah, I'm in the very much the same boat. It just came time, right? It just came time, and I wanted to focus on nomadic research and focus on the show, and it was a chapter that I'll always be thankful for, and the reunions are, epic. I know you missed this last one, but don't miss the next one.
I won't.
It's good. It was they did a really good job with that.
I'm looking forward to it.
With that reunion. But well, I'm glad Target Down Group is keeping you in the fight, so to speak, because anybody that comes underneath of you is going to learn a thing or two. So
I hope so.
You keep me in the loop with that. I'll and of course I'll be pinging Dan. As long as I'm on the thread, you kind of keep your finger on the pulse, right?
You need to get him in here and sit him down and.
He said he would. He said he would.
He's done a lot in his life.
Yeah, he sure has.
Interesting stories.
Well, how do we wrap this up? You said you wanted to talk a little bit about the homesteading and kind of the state of the union and your feelings.
Yeah, but you don't have the time for that. That's my passion right now. My wife and I live on a little homestead that and we grow most of our own food, and it's kind of just what we do now. Right? And it's very enjoyable. I've done it most of my life.
It's got to be incredibly cathartic.
It is. And my kids are involved in it now a little bit. They're adults now. And actually, I'm a granddad. I got a beautiful granddaughter.
Is that new?
Yeah. She's a year old, just turned a year.
Congratulations. I think I might have missed that.
Yeah, she's just a beautiful little girl. And so I get to spend a couple days a week with her. And it's definitely a wind down. But that, and then just getting ready for whatever the world throws at us. There's always that chance. There's so much uncertainty in the world right now, as you know. we've been ready for about anything for a lot of years in between deployments. That's where I spent most of my time and energy, was just getting our house in order so that I can take care of my family no matter what happens. And so we're kind of at the pinnacle of that right now.
Good. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And it's kind of amazing. And tell me if I'm sure you have, because you're living it, like, it takes up so much bandwidth, that other, where we came from and what we did, not only overseas, but, in the instruction or instructor side of the house, like, you're given everything that you got all day, every day, at least when you're there at work. Right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing once you, kind of refocus that energy into something else. Like, you find like a new work of passion, right? And some place to pour your heart and soul into it.
You can't come home from a deployment and then just want to go out shooting with your buddies all day. You're so sick of war and shooting. I still find enjoyment in the shooting portion, but I want to not do it so much that I don't find enjoyment in it anymore. And so I, put my focus, my energy on homesteading and gardening and animals and so yeah. Construction, building stuff, building barns, and whatever it is. Spending time with my granddaughter. But
you've earned every bit of it.
Yeah.
I
hope so.
Yeah, you've earned every bit of it. Well, I want to thank you for your friendship and for coming on the show here. I enjoy every minute that I spend with you, and I want to come and visit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I know I'm sure, and this obviously always an open invitation here as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. This has been a good experience, just sitting down and catching up with you and your company. I've been using your products for a while, your Raider pack and your raincoat.
Yeah,
all the guys at work have them, And I started seeing them, and I'm
Stan's
like, hey, where
favorite.
did you get that? And I see Nomadic Research, and I'm like, oh, it's Dagan's company. I'm like, okay, how are they? Like, oh man, these things are the bomb. I'm like,
couldn't have
well,
better.
They're not $700 or $800, are they? Like an Arc'teryx? And like, no, you can afford these. I'm like, okay. So
couldn't have better advertisements than those dudes, right?
Those guys are always draped in your
I love
logo.
it. Yeah, they've been very, very supportive, and not easy dudes to please. None of us are, right?
Yeah, so they demand the best.
Correct. Yeah. So I don't want to say I was reluctant. Of course, I wasn't reluctant, but yeah, when you get the positive feedback right away, it's like, yep, we're nailing it, we're crushing it. Well, Tim, once again, thank you.
Yeah,
and
you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to take you to lunch.
Let's do it.
All right, stay mobile, everybody. We appreciate it.
Out.